Yo, everybody. Welcome to Off Panel, a weekly interview podcast about all things comics. I'm your host, David Harper, and this week, it's time for my favorite episode of the year. It's the Year in Review Spectacular with my pal, Brandon Burpee, where we look back on our favorite comics of the year and a whole lot more. Brandon, are you ready to make it happen?
Oh, baby, you know I am. I look forward to this all year long.
I do like this. This is just like a random thing, and not to make any comic creators or anybody else feel bad, but I do always take great joy that this is always one of the most listened to episodes the entire year. And it's like, we're just a couple dudes that like met each other in Alaska and like talking about comics. Yay.
Yeah, it's crazy. How many years is this now that we've done this?
I mean, including for color, like, I don't know, like 9 years.
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah, it probably like at least 9 years. But yeah, no, I think that's about it. But all right, so let's talk. We're going to, eventually close with our 20 favorite comics of the year. I want to start with the bigger, broader question. The year in comics for 2018. How do you think it was? Like, do you think it was a good year? Do you think it was a bad year? What's your take?
I dug it. I actually did. I thought this was one of the better years than we've had in a bit. I felt like there was more experimentation. I thought there was more like a lot more limited series coming back, which was cool. At least at the big two, which we didn't see those guys for a hot minute. Limited series,
Right.
But with the great, there's always the not so great. Like obviously, there's been some relaunches recently. I wasn't too stoked about, but it's getting better, and things like that. But overall, and me, I'm a diehard superhero comics fan, so I think this year in superhero comics in particular has been really strong.
I think, yeah, we're going to talk about some of the specifics here in a bit, but I mean, like, I think the overall year was really good. And like my comparison I've been making is like, okay, so the general idea is like there's no instant classics, but there's like a lot of depth. So here's my comparison. It's the 2004 Detroit Pistons where you don't have a single Hall of Famer and barely any All-Stars, but you still win the title. It's like you don't have that Shaq and Kobe or something like that, but you have like a lot of depth. And I think like this year it's like the all of the publishers had like a lot of books that kind of came out of nowhere for me. A lot of books that I didn't really expect to love. I still love the books that I always do, but it's like there's a lot more ones that surprise me, and like I really enjoyed that. I like, we always talk about how one of our favorite things about comics was like, chasing that feeling when we were a kid where it's like the comics come out of nowhere to shock us and surprise us. And maybe we didn't get that necessarily in all the stories, but there was a lot of stuff that came out of nowhere to, that I just loved that I didn't expect. Like I picked up, a random book and I was like, wow, that just totally crushed it for me.
Yeah, absolutely. And even with like the more experimental stuff and things like that, there's also been some great lip service books, like books that are just so nostalgic or just right on the money without changing too much that they're perfect. So I just thought there was a good blend for everybody this year.
Do you have an example you can talk about for that? Or is that going to spoil stuff?
Yeah, I'll touch on some of that as I go through my list if you want. But yeah, if I say anything, I think it's spoil it. But I've definitely got real examples in the list.
Okay, yeah, I'm just kind of curious about that. But, one thing that we talked about last year, I'm kind of curious to see if like it's evolved at all. Like how our reading habits continue to change, if at all. Like my thing this year that I thought was really interesting, and I don't know if it's I kind of think it's because Marvel's fresh start, but I cycled back to buying more single issues again, while also like, I don't know, I spent a lot more time like binging old series on Marvel Unlimited too. I actually just feel like I read a lot more comics this year, and I think it's just because my enthusiasm was really high for a long time. I actually really do think it's the most I enjoyed comics in several years, in like always. Like I just was buying more, I was reading more. I just felt a lot more voracious, and I think it's just because there's a lot more out there that I liked.
Yeah, I think you're right on the money with that. I couldn't disagree with you. There's just so much out there, and again, there's just so much out there too. Like I feel like again the variety, and you touched on it, and I'll touch on it with some of my list too. But even like things that I didn't expect to end up where they ended up on my list. Like as I'm putting together my list, I'm like, is that really going this far? Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay. That's happening. All right. Hell yeah.
Yeah. I found like some stuff in my list where I was like, okay, I'm going to put that there for now. Just, we're going to see what happens. I'm like, okay, it's not moving. It's staying there. What? Oh, I guess that's what's happening. That's just it.
Did I break it?
So did you, it sounds like you were buying more or reading more digitally. Is that the case for you?
So this year, actually, last year I read a lot more digitally. This year I have been going back to my comic shops a little bit more.
Yeah.
And like I've been hitting different ones here in town. Just like the selection here is so cool. Like there's just so many comic shops. And coming from Alaska where there was like two, but really only one.
Well, now there's only one.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they don't sucked anyway. They couldn't even touch stuff. I'm a grown ass man. Don't tell me not to touch stuff.
It's a comic book shop, not a museum.
Yeah.
Come on.
Put it behind some barriers, fool. So yeah, anyway, so I've been going to more shops, but I agree with you 100%. Like Marvel Unlimited along with Spotify are like the two best digital subscriptions I have. Like I binge so much old stuff. Like I'm moving so far ahead into the X-Men stuff. I'm almost into like the Claremont coming back after Grant Morrison's run. Like I'm moving far along. Yeah.
And that's from
like
the
my
beginning?
epic journey's almost complete. Yeah. From the beginning and tying in all miniseries and things that are happening in chronological order. Like I've been working on this forever.
So are you reading like Uncanny or is it everything?
Everything.
Oh
Uncanny.
my God.
And then as a series ends, like Excalibur ends, gone. X-Force ends, X-Factor. You know, they bring in different stuff. So
how do you read that? Like, are you trying to read it chronologically or are you reading it like, are you jumping? It's like, okay, so I've read Uncanny 264, so time to move over to the corresponding issue for X Factor. Or what are you doing?
I'm doing like release month because you know back when comics were for the most part monthly, you could keep track of which one came from where.
Right.
But yeah, so it gets a little more difficult now.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like I'll just do everything from July 1995, and then I'll move on to everything from August of 1995. And the Marvel Unlimited app is so dope that you can organize it by release date. So like actual legit in-shop date.
I have never done that.
Yeah, so it'll organize it for you, and then I just read along.
I've brought this up a couple times in the podcast where like I talk to my younger coworkers and they're like talking about like they're like, oh yeah, have you seen that show The Office? I'm like, yeah, when it was on the air like 7 years ago. But they like kind of act like it's current because it's on Netflix and they're just watching it as if it's new. And I kind of feel like one of the weird things about making one of these lists this year is like the best comics I read this year aren't necessarily even the ones that came out this year because a lot of it's like, oh, I went and read X, like maybe I read Next Wave for the first time. Obviously, that's not the case because I love Next Wave, but it's like I kind of like I had some people telling me things like, oh yeah, my favorite comic I read this year is like All-Star Superman. And I'm just like, that came out like a decade ago. Like, but at the same time, but it's new to you. So it's kind of like, I don't know. I just think that the experience of engaging with media has changed so much because of binging and because of how we're reading stuff digitally and watching stuff digitally that it's almost like release date matters less. Yet I still love doing best of X year lists because it's still fun. But it is kind of weird how we engage with this stuff differently.
Yeah, it's fun. And as like a giant nerd, I love, again, the Marvel Unlimited, like the way you can organize them because you put everything in your library. And then you can just, again, you can filter it by series, character, creator, release date. I mean, like, they make it so easy. Like, it's crazy. The only way it could get better is if you could put it in, like, Spider-Man family, Avengers family. That would be incredible.
That'd be nice. Did you do DC Universe?
I tried the 7-day trial, and then I abruptly stopped.
Oh. Did you just, like, watch one episode of Titans, and you're like, I'm out. I
fell asleep during the first episode. I don't know. It didn't catch me. I'll try it again at some point.
Yeah.
I just didn't when I was looking through it. Like, it's nice that they're finally getting their toe, like little tiny pinky toe, in the
like
digital
a little
comic.
bit of the pinky toe, only a little bit.
Tip, yeah, not to the nail, but the tip of the pinky toe.
Right.
They're getting in there somewhere, I guess, but it's like not enough. You know, at this point in time, and you and I have talked about this for years now. Like, if you guys aren't working on cataloging this and having this ready, and we've said this year after year after year, like, what the fuck are you doing? And I think when they put this out, they proved, like, they have not been doing that. Because why not just blast everybody with it?
The reason why is because, I'm guessing, is because they actually make a lot more money off of, like, book sales, like trade sales. Because they're actually good at trade paperbacks as opposed to Marvel, who's not. And I think they've just been like, whatever, Marvel Unlimited, we're just going to abandon that stuff. And we're just going to do, like, you know, a little nod towards trade paperbacks and everything. But I don't know. I don't think the DC Unlimited product that you and I both desperately want as consumers is ever really going to come because it would cannibalize a lot of their other product.
Yeah, and like I got on there and I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch this DC thing, and I'm flipping through. I'm like, oh, it's not even on here. I don't remember what it was. I'm like, it's not even on here. Like I thought you guys' whole thing was that everything is fucking on here, but nothing's on here.
Yeah. Well,
But
maybe
they got
later.
my ass as soon as Young Justice comes out. They got me immediately.
I actually think the Harley Quinn show looks fun.
That does, but man, those first 2 seasons of Young Justice, I love that show. I used to watch that with Dex when he was like 3 or 4.
Yeah.
Like, oh man, I love that show. And it ended so awesome, but it looks like they're bringing it back even better. Like, I can't wait. And it's got Superboy.
Oh my God. Oh, that's gonna be big for you because you got Young Justice comics coming.
2019 is gonna be the year of Superboy and Maggot, baby. Maggot is on that cover.
Let's talk. Well, yeah, for the Age of X-Man.
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you, that wasn't even a joke. It's real.
And it's Botchlo. We got some Botchlo up in there.
No, it was beautiful. I wept. Just one.
So let's talk about the things that surprised us this year, like the things that, in a positive way, like the things that we enjoy the surprise. I'll start off. I'm just gonna say that I didn't expect to you know how Marvel's relaunched so many times where you're just like, whatever, it's another relaunch. It's like I don't even particularly care. It's just another thing. But Fresh Start really got me. Like it totally got me. And I was buying more Marvel than I had in a long time. And while everything isn't a hit, like I thought the first 2 issues of the Fantastic Four book were terrible. And I was completely out on those. And I've been disappointed in Jason Aaron's run on the Avengers.
Yes.
The Fresh Start stuff, like that's where the surprising depth really comes in, because there's a lot of books in there that I did not expect to love that I did. Mm-hmm. What surprised you this year?
Some of the ones you touched on, like the Jason Aaron Avengers, like I really don't care too much for, I just don't care for it. Like there's no hook to me. I also feel the same way about Thor right now. Like I'm really not digging it. Like it kind of felt like it fell off a bit to me.
I love the most recent issue. The most recent issue was amazing.
The most recent issue was the best one so far.
Yeah.
And Fantastic Four, I think, is starting to gain traction. But yeah, I'm with you. Those first couple issues, I was like, what? And Uncanny X-Men, like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I actually read the first 3 issues. I didn't hate them. They just felt very formulaic. Like to the point where they even destroyed the X-Mansion just because like it kind of felt like X-Men Mad Libs to a certain degree. And yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. It's not bad. It's just kind of underwhelming.
Right.
Like it's just kind of like, oh, you guys, and it's Marvel's fault because they hyped it up so hard, and then this is what they delivered. They definitely gotta. But you've got to understand as a showman, like the best way to hype it and be able to walk away from the stage, as opposed to hyping it so hard that you get hit with like tomatoes. Like there's a fine line there, and they fell off the stage, man. Like so many people complaining about how it was advertised and all this stuff, and like just don't advertise it so hard like that.
Well, I mean, that's why, I mean, I made this comment on another podcast one time where I said Marvel has become the boy who cried relaunch. And it's like you relaunch so many times that people just stop caring. And like that's the thing that kind of bums me out is I think Fresh Start is great, or was great. I don't even know if you call it Fresh Start anymore. It's like a less fresh start. It's like a moderately fresh continuing thing at this point.
All new fresher start.
All new fresher start. But I mean, like that was really good. But I kind of feel like a lot of people are just like, whatever, same shit, different day. I'm just gonna like ignore it until they like relaunch with something else I like or something like that. But I don't know. I mean, it's just tough because they've kind of created this own atmosphere for their own work that people kind of dismiss them out of hand, despite the fact that it's like, but wait, we're good. We have some cool stuff in here.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, you touched on something that's been super relevant to me this year, in that Marvel does seem to relaunch so quickly that if I try a couple issues of something, I'll just drop it all together,
right,
and wait for it to pop up on Marvel Unlimited. Like I know another one's coming soon. Doesn't really matter.
So they've kind of like made it so you just kind of sample, and if it doesn't fit what you're expecting, you're just like, whatever. It's gonna be a new flavor coming pretty soon. I don't know. I mean, it's kind of interesting because it's like they're creating customers who are like, I don't know, interchangeable. Like all their books are interchangeable and they don't really have a lot of value. I don't know. That's kind of interesting. It's kind of sad for me, but
it's super sad because you figure Marvel was built on this long tradition of like tradition,
right?
Like, you know, And DC, they had Crisis and stuff like that, but now DC's feeling a little bit more like the tradition location, and Marvel's just constantly like, we relaunch every 6 years, we relaunch every 6 years.
No, they've relaunched 7 times in the last 7 years, like in some capacity.
Yeah,
I ranked all of them. So are there any positive surprises? Like anything that you like came out of nowhere for you where you're like, oh yeah, like that really worked for me. Like I didn't expect that.
Yeah, but they're on my list.
Okay. All right. We'll talk about those later.
Okay.
I do want to say a couple things that disappointed me because that was one of the things that was on our list. Wolverine's Eternal Return is like endlessly frustrating to me, and I don't understand how many. I talked about this in the last podcast, so I'm not going to go too deep on it, but it's like there's seemingly multiple Wolverines currently in Marvel continuity, like one that has hot claws, another one that has Phoenix powers, and like seemingly is omniscient and understands everything that's going on in the universe and can talk to Celestials. And I don't understand what's going on. It's taken more than a year to get to this point, and he's still not, air quotes, back. And like that's just frustrating to me. I'm just like, he's Wolverine, just bring him back. Just like, yeah. Hey, Wolverine, he got out of his adamantium sauna and he's lost a few pounds and he's drinking some beer and he's getting back into shape and now he's off doing stuff. I mean, you're done. Do it.
Yeah, and don't forget Old Man Logan.
Right.
And Age of Ultron Wolverine, which is still out there somewhere.
Age of Ultron Wolverine, always on the table. Still waiting to come back. Just got to wait.
And let me do my Exiles book.
Oh, my God. That'd be amazing.
I will wrap it up.
And the other things I have problems, or really, really quick, the books that like disappointed me a bit. I was disappointed by Justice League. I expected to like that relaunch more. It was very, I don't know. There's just a lot of ideas in there that weren't really like earned, in my opinion. And it kind of bummed me out. And in that same vein, like, Heroes in Crisis, like I was not feeling that. I dropped it after 2 issues. It might get there, but it just kind of felt like a book that was different than what was kind of promoted. It was like promoted as this book about characters dealing with the struggle and the, like kind of PTSD that comes with being a superhero, which sounds interesting, but then it became like a murder book. And that was a bummer for me because I'm just like, why are you just killing everybody? I have PTSD from reading this comic.
Yeah, I feel like they took like Infinite Crisis and just like the murder sprees and tried to like crush it inside of Identity Crisis and just like make it like some crazy mold, and it just does not work. Like the way they've put it together, it just doesn't jive. Having said that, I'm obviously still reading it. It's got Booster Gold. But I don't necessarily enjoy it.
Oh my God. So I had a garage sale this year for a lot of my back issues, which I had like a stunning amount of people show up and like I went through 9 long boxes of books. But one of the ones that made me the saddest is I actually sold the Jeff Johns run of Booster Gold. And I know I really like that book, but I was like, I can buy the trades now, or I can buy. I ended up buying it in DC's digital sale this year because that's a really good run. Like Booster Gold, sneaky great character.
Yeah, super good.
I like 52 stuff, and then like the 1 year later stuff was both really good, and like I love that whole run because it was kind of like Squirrel Girl for me in the sense that it kind of legitimized a character that was often treated like a joke. And I don't know, he was great. I mean, that's the thing about Booster Gold, though, is you have to kind of treat him like a joke because he's like a movie star who just wants to be famous and like have logos on his body, and he still wants to help people, but he's just like, notoriety's cool too. I don't know. I love Booster.
They just need to watch themselves on that book because they're dangerously close to bishoping Booster Gold circa Messiah Complex. Like, I don't need them doing this to him.
You mean turn him into a villain?
Turn him into a villain and basically like wrecking the character for like a decade.
Yeah.
Until they finally bring him back. Like I don't usually say like, oh, Marvel ruined this character, but they kind of ruined him for a hot minute there. He was gone for like 10 years.
Yeah.
Like he went from being a super forefront to way in the back. Like they fucked that up.
Hey, he was a villain in the Cable comic. I don't know if you remember that.
Nobody remembers that.
I like that run. That was like the Ariel Olivetti, and I don't remember who it was. I can't believe I like that book. It was pretty good. And like for some reason, Bishop was like, I'm gonna kill. Oh no, it's because Hope was in it, and he had his like major hate on for Hope. He's just like, I gotta kill this girl. Whatever. She's from the future. This is bad.
I'll get to it during my X-Men readathon and Marvel Unlimited Sunday.
The other thing that disappointed me was there was a lot of books I really like that I understand, like, making comics is a taxing thing. I understand that as well as anybody that doesn't actually make comics. But there's a lot of books that I really like that kind of disappeared from the schedules this year, and it kind of bummed me out.
Yes.
And I'm not even like this isn't even a Saga comment. Like, Saga's taking a year break, but at least I know about it. I know it's gone for a year. Like, if I know about it, it feels better. But there's just some ones where I'm just like, is this book coming out again? And that's just kind of a bummer.
Yeah, motocross.
Motocross.
Or,
Motocrush.
Yeah, motocross. I don't know why I said motocross. Motocrush. Like, what the hell, man? Where's the book?
So they switched to a trade schedule. So they're going to start releasing it as graphic novels now, and it's coming out, I think, in like April-ish. I don't know for sure, but they switched to trades just because it wasn't totally, the monthly schedule wasn't working for them. But I understand that. So let's talk about what we'd like to see in 2019 before we jump into our top 20 books. Is there anything you're hoping for in 2019 besides the Maggot Renaissance you've always been waiting for?
Yep, and it's coming.
Is it the Maggot Renaissance?
Yep. and then you just wait. I'm telling you, like, music's been written about him in 2018. The foundation has been laid. All the jokes are about to be put away, or he could just be put in like a book with like Herman Glob, and like let them go off on their own little buddy thing. Anyway,
I gotta say that song was pretty good. Good job by you, Jordan White.
It was really good. I love it. But I want to see more Superboy, and that's obviously going to happen. Outside of that, I would like to see maybe like a move back to more monthly comics and allowing for other books to be published, like in the X-Men line, for example. Instead of having, Uncanny X-Men 4 times a month, I'd rather have it once a month and then have like an X-Factor book or an Excalibur book. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Well, like, have each week filled with like a different flavor of X-Men. It's like you get the same amount of books, but it's like it allows for a more varied palette.
Yeah, because you could basically have a weekly comic being X-Men, but it doesn't even have to look that way because you could title every week different with different numeric system. You know what I mean? Like, just set up your schedule so you've got a monthly run, just different titles, and have them all, very close to being in the same universe without being like an encumbrance. You know what I mean? Like, it's not draining on you. Like you mentioned Justice League. That was one of my honorable mentions. And that was one of my disappointments where I thought it started out super strong, and then the last half just fell off. Like, it got tied into events, and like just like, where are you going, man?
The thing that bothers me about Justice League is mostly the fact that like Snyder kept throwing in these things like, oh yeah, the Flash and the Still Force. I'm like, what the fuck is the Still Force? Like, where did this come from? Like, you can't just like say things into existence. Like, it's like it didn't really feel like it was something that was actually like. It was just like it was being said in a way that made me feel like I didn't read the right comics leading into it. And maybe the Still Force exists somewhere else.
You didn't read it's in the Flash.
The Still Force is in the Flash?
Yep.
But I mean,
all
like,
the different forces.
So, and I'm reading that in trade. I guess I just haven't gotten there yet. But the thing about it is that, like, if you're just reading Justice League, then how do you understand that, right?
Because at one point they tied in some way. Like, and I'm not being vague. I honestly don't remember, but I agree with you entirely. Like, that's my whole concern with this is like it becomes so interconnected and everything. You're tying into everything that it's like I don't want to read any of it now.
Right. A book has to stand on its own two legs. It's like continuity is supposed to be like flavor or color. It's not meant to be the definition of the entirety of what's happening, right?
Yeah, I just miss like like events being big, impactful things that happen like maybe once a year.
Right.
I'm not even asking for us to go back to like more than once a year. Once a year was fine. I like events. But Jesus Christ, there's just so much going on all the time that nothing can develop. And then they're like, we can't gain a readership. Well, I wonder why.
Yeah. It definitely can make it tough because it's like you don't necessarily understand what's going on. But I did actually have a patron question. Like in my last episode, we talked a lot about what's coming for the X-Men and like what could make the X-Men regain their former glory. And like one of the things that I talked about is I think that like there might be a reset in the future. Like, you look at Age of X-Men and you look at what's happening with Uncanny X-Men and you look at all that and it kind of and X-Men Extermination. I mean, those the 05, they're out of here. They're donezo. It feels like we're going towards a reset.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely. And I do think that like the more I'm reading Uncanny X-Men and the more I'm seeing like, now we know it's setting up this Age of X-Man crossover event, whatever, that's taking over. Like I feel like it's so similar to Flashpoint. It's just like a placeholder somewhere in the middle.
Right.
You got to kill some time, so we're going to tell this story here.
Or like
But wait,
Convergence.
yeah, and then do a massive relaunch. I don't know, maybe around the time Phoenix comes out in theaters.
Is that ever coming out? They keep pushing the date back.
Yeah, I think it comes out in July. So you bust it out as your big Marvel summer event with the X-Men. Kick it off right.
Yeah.
Like, but to do that, they've got to. And don't get me wrong on this. The team that they have on Uncanny X-Men right now, the writers and artists, are actually really great. Like,
yeah,
they have all done books this year that I love.
Mm-hmm.
But
I just want to say I also really like X-Men Extermination. I think that's a good book.
I do too, but like, what the fuck with this ending? Like, you're just gonna drag this out for like 4 months?
Yeah.
Like, basically, you're telling me and every other reader it's really not that important because you've got a whole big event that's gonna be done by the time that comes out. Like, what?
When is it coming out? When's number 5 coming out?
It doesn't come out till like, I don't know, the end of the month or next month.
Oh wow, yeah. No, I heard that it was like delayed because the artist like didn't finish it. I do have to say, gotta give him credit. Pepe Larraz is a really good artist, and I'm glad that they actually have an artist throughout the whole thing because I'm not super into the rotating every issues thing. Like I'm not crazy about that art wise, but but at the same time, when you see like a delay because of that, you're like, oh, I guess I kind of understand it.
Yeah, so I mean, like, I like the teams, but like, I think if you're gonna relaunch the X-Men and relaunch Uncanny X-Men, you got to put your fucking foot down. Like, you got to come in with a superb artist and a superb writer and make a point of it. You know what I mean? Like, boom, plant your flag. And they didn't really do that here. They were like, hey, we're going to take everything that you've enjoyed in the X-Men books in the last like 6 months or more, and we're going to let these people do this with the title and save time in between whatever else we're doing. And in the meantime, we're going to throw all these people out here to get crucified because we've tricked you into thinking they're the relaunch.
I keep saying it and I do believe it's true. Is it feels like stalling. And,
It does.
And like I think that there will be a new like a reset, and I mean ideally like I think what you said of like having distinct books, like we talked about this last time on the pod, the guest and I talked about it last time on the pod, so I don't want to go too deep into it, but it is like I do think that like they have to have like distinct flavors of books to have their own reason to exist. It's like you have to have like, if it's an Excalibur book, it has to have a reason to be Excalibur, and if it's an Uncanny book, it has to like, you got to have your school book, and you got to have this, and you got to have that. That sounds like X-Men Mad Libs again, but at the same time, I just mean, I'm not saying you have to do that, but you have to have something that gives these books a reason to exist on their own.
Yeah, honestly at this point, I'd be super down with them just shutting the school down. And instead of having a school book, have like a Generation X type book or a New Mutants type book where the team goes off and does their own thing. You know what I mean? And they're kind of building that right now. It feels like something like that.
They've done that a few times. I mean, like the New Mutants where they were in San Francisco, although at that point they were kind of like old mutants because they'd been, there was like the Danny Moonstar and like Sam Guthrie and everything like that. But it does feel like the young X-Men and Uncanny are kind of like in their own like world, and they're like kind of getting set up to be the next generation, which is cool because I like those characters.
Yeah, as long as they're not setting them up for a fatal error, which worries me too. They just wipe them all out.
Yeah, that would not be good. It's like, Nate Gray decided that you guys don't belong, so deleted.
Yeah, aging is crazy with the X-Men and time travel. Blink, you're all gone.
All right, just a few more things I want to say that I'm excited about in 2019, or what I'd like to see. So they have the DC Ink and Zoom. I brought that up a lot in the podcast. Those are like the YA and middle grade reader books that DC's doing that are going to be primarily for the book market. I really hope those are great because like I want like Dex and Eva to have books to like grow up on that aren't just like the ones that we read. Like I want them to have like stuff for themselves. Like I think that would be really cool. And these books seem really good. I know some of the creators that are working on them. And they have like some fantastic teams on it, and they have some cool characters and everything. Like the Raven book, I think is gonna be great. Like I'm really excited for that one. So I think that's pretty cool. And I think like if they start building, because this DC superhero girls is hugely popular with young readers. Like, if you can build from superhero girls to like the middle grade readers to like the young adult to like, you know, what we're reading, not that it's so adult in and of itself, I think that's a good plan for the future. So I just want that to be a success.
Yeah, one of the things I really want to see is a continued push like there has been recently with like female characters, movies, things like that. Because my daughter's so thirsty for it right now, which guarantee you there's more little girls out there thirsty for it like my daughters, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's cool to see her, like, she watched that newest Captain Marvel trailer. I thought her head was going to explode. Like, she was so stoked, and like she wants to see Aquaman, but she doesn't even care about Aquaman. She wants to see Mara, you know what I mean?
Right,
Like,
right.
she's just at that point now where she's like, oh man, these chicks are badass. Like, I want there to be more of that for her. Like, it's cool to see her get as excited about it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I also want to see one. I'm dying for this one. Like, I love how Image releases their trades like right after the end of arcs. I want everyone to do that, because a good example is BPRD. Like, I love that book, but for some reason, brilliant idea by me, I decided to switch to trades, and now I'm trying to catch up. But Bosco's doesn't have issue 6, and so I can't buy 7 through 11. And
Why don't you
like,
get them Amazon?
what's that?
Why don't you get them on Amazon?
Like the single issue?
Oh, I thought you meant you wanted to talk about the trade.
No. I mean, like the second trade for this volume hasn't come out yet, and so like I don't know when it's going to come out, and like I just want them to come out closer together so I can like I'm like dying to transition from trades to single issues, and I just don't have that option. It seems so weird that we're still like releasing trades like 5 or 6 months after like the single issue goes like for sale. The final issue for the arc. That just seems really weird to me. And then the other thing I want to see is more maxi series and more like one-shot graphic novellas. Like, I really love the fact that we have maxi series like the new Martian Manhunter one and like Mr. Miracle and everything like that. I love maxi series. They're great because they end up being 2 trades or like 1 hardcover or both. And like, that's great. That's a really great way to do comics. And then you don't have to like, not everything has to be an ongoing. Like, you were talking about how you enjoyed the minis this year. It allows you to kind of try some different things. And I think that's good for comics. Like, risk is good. And like, this mitigates risk while allowing for, you know, a unique approach to storytelling.
Yeah, and I think it's nice to have the miniseries too, because I think sometimes they try to launch these new series which don't really have much of a story beyond 6 issues.
Right.
That's why you find some of these getting canceled. It's like, okay, what else can we do with this? Well, if you didn't have anything else to say, why bother? Like, do something else for another 6 issues, you know? And then if you have a story, cycle back. Like, there's nothing stopping you.
Yeah, not everything has to be an ongoing.
Yeah, and honestly, what the hell's an ongoing anymore?
I know.
Like, what is that? Like, that's a term that's so antiquated now. Like, it's sad, but I mean, it's becoming truer and truer every year.
You know, I have to say one other thing that disappoints me, and this is just like a larger thing, but it's like, as much as like I understand why they're doing it, but you know how Marvel's doing like the legacy numbering on top of like the normal numbering? Like, what they're doing, they have that Avengers No Road Home coming out, like the sequel to No Surrender.
Yeah.
And like, what they're doing is like they're randomly jumping the Jason Aaron series 10 issues because the No Road Home is going to exist within that. And I'm just like, so all of a sudden we're going to go from like 711 to like 721 in the series. And like, in my old school brain of reading comics, I just look at that and I'm just like, this is going to be, I know this is stupid. I know this is not a petty complaint, but I'm like, organizing that is just so frustrating as a person who likes complete things. And I know that they can't just think about me because I'm like an old school reader, but at the same time, it's such a weird thing to me. And why not just make it its own miniseries? Like, it doesn't have to be part of the Avengers line, but whatever.
I'll tell you exactly why. Because it's corporate America buying our fandom, and they're trying to get those numbers up as quick as possible.
I know, get them closer to 750 and 800.
Yeah, Action hit 1,000. Like, the more you can pad these and get up there with those guys, like, the better.
Yeah.
And so you're going to see, you know, Uncanny X-Men being 4 times a month, you know, and just pushing everything so hard. This is going to be the new variant cover. It's just gonna collapse the market.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Yo, everybody. I want to take a quick break to talk about my friends at Radio vs. the Martians. Mike Gillis and Casey Doran host the Radio vs. the Martians podcast, a show that gathers their funniest, smartest friends once a month for a deep dive into science fiction, video games, horror, comics, movies, and everything in between. So far, they've dissected topics like Superman, Steven Spielberg, Akira, George Lucas, Zombies, Twin Peaks, Hayao Miyazaki, James Bond, Watchmen, and whether drivers are required to pull over for the Ghostbusters. Find this podcast and its spin-off show, Podcast a la Vista, baby, a celebration of the films of thespian and statesman Arnold Schwarzenegger on iTunes, Stitcher, and at radioversusthemartians.com. And now, back to the show. Let's move on to things we like. Let's move on to the end of the year list. A few words of housekeeping before we get started. I want to say that this list is these are our favorites. Like, we're not saying that these are objectively the best comics that existed this year. These are the books that we love the most, exhaustively tracked by Brandon and like frantically tracked by me at the end. And you know, it's like, I think that's important because it's like we're not meaning for these lists to be representative of like the comic book medium or like every single person. This is just what we liked, and this is what we will remember from 2018 the most. Fair statement?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and these lists are so weird every year because sometimes there's a book that technically and critically, yeah, it's a better book than something else higher up on the list. But maybe I enjoyed the hell out of that book that year. You know what I mean? And there's a few of those books like that for me this year where like they came out of left field and they may not be critically the best ever as far as, you know, like moving the medium forward or something, but they were hella enjoyable. And that goes a long way with me.
Yeah. I mean, I think you got to find a balance there because it's like, I think technical proficiency is important, but I think enjoyment is also important. And so it's like finding a balance there. Like I have like graphic novels that are, you know, well crafted and well respected on my list, but I also have like, you know, superhero comics that are just enjoyable to read. I like having, it's not like it's an ice cream store where you can only get one flavor or something like that. It's like
Krispy Kreme donuts, man. What the hell is that? Why would you ever want to go there?
What do you mean? Because those glazed donuts are really dope.
But that's all they got.
Are you don't they have other donuts? We have a Krispy Kreme, but I never go there. But those donuts
there's one close to my house, but I'll never go.
They have to have other flavors. They don't just have the glazed donuts. I think people just know the glazed donuts. They're really good though. Oh, anyways, all right. So we're gonna go through honorable mentions, the ones that didn't quite make the list, really quick, and then we're gonna jump into our top 20 in reverse order, and we're gonna go snake draft style, where we're gonna go. Brandon goes once, I go twice, Brandon goes twice, etc., etc. Brandon, do you want to give me some honorable mentions?
Do you want me to hit you with all of them, or are we doing these snakes though?
Do all of them, and like drop in whatever points you got on them, and we can talk about them a little bit.
Yeah, cool. So Paper Girls made my honorable mentions. That was on my list last year, but not any drastic drop in quality of any sort or anything like that. Just didn't make the list this year because there were so many good books, you know, in my opinion, this year.
Really quick. I'm going to comment on each of them really quick, but I just want to say that Paper Girls, I love it. It's a great book, but it's just like there was a lot of good stuff, and it didn't even make my honorable mentions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Saga didn't make my honorable mentions or my top 20 either.
Yeah, BKV and Cliff Chang killed it this year, but
it's a good book.
Yeah.
It's a metronome book.
It's a what?
Metronome book. Remember we used to talk about that? The books that's just like, it's almost like you run out of like positive things to say about it because it's always just good.
Yep.
Yeah,
like Saga.
I do think that's like one of the funny things about comics like that is just like people don't want to talk about like Saga being good for 54 issues or Paper Girls being good for 35 issues or Chew being good for 60 issues or whatever because you just expect them to be good. It's like they're less fun to talk about than the new hotness.
It's like Greg Popovich never getting Coach of the Year.
Exactly. Oh, perfect.
Despite eating it every year. Like,
yeah, exactly. So. Maybe not this year, but yeah. Sorry, what else were you gonna say about it?
No, that's it. That just real solid book. Just didn't make my list. I touched on Justice League earlier. I really enjoyed the first half, and then it literally just dropped off. Like it just started tying into Drowned Earth, and that was one of those ones we talked about earlier where everything started tying into everything, and I stopped reading all of it. I was just like, nope, done.
I dropped Justice League Dark for exactly 2 issues because within 3 issues it had tied into Wonder Woman, and I was just like, it made sense that they did it, but I was just like, I just want to read Justice League Dark. Just let me read Justice League Dark.
Yeah, let it have some room to breathe.
Yeah, for sure. All right, what's next?
Extermination. We talked about that. Really fun book. I actually really appreciated the way they did the art in this so far, that it looks so much like Bendis and Immonen's era.
Yeah.
With the coloring and the art style. Like they just did a really solid job of making that kind of like the bookend. And it's been fun as hell. But I mean, again, that last issue dragging out made me mad, so it didn't make my list. I got you, extermination.
Never forget that Brandon and I are petty people.
Yeah. Outside of that, I've got Punisher, the most recent with Matt Rosenberg and Simon Kundronsky.
Mm-hmm.
Kundronsky? I always mess that name up.
I think it's like Zyman Kudranski or something like
Okay.
that. I don't know why I just sounded like I was an actual Russian person there, but whatever.
But yeah, that book has been awesome. It's just like a giant murder fest. Like it's fantastic. Like
very Punisher-y.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the most Punisher book I think I've ever read. Like they're not even trying to do anything else. Like he's just going nuts, and it's got Baron Zemo, and I love me some Baron Zemo.
Ooh, yeah.
And then my last honorable mention is what I like to call Space Panther, Black Panther, Ta-Nehisi Coates and Daniel Acuna's current like Black Panther run, where it's literally out in space. Like it's just so much fun and wild. Like I honestly didn't necessarily enjoy his Black Panther run when it was just like in Wakanda and just proper. Like it was really slow to me, and I didn't love it. Space Panther, I'm digging.
Space Panther also made my honorable mentions. I really enjoy it. It's a super fun book. I think that you can actually feel like Ta-Nehisi Coates getting better at making comics, because his Captain America book is also good, and like Black Panther is like, it's just when you read it, because like the whole Space Panther is such a unique take on it.
Mm-hmm.
This is hilariously like big for a comic that didn't even make my top 20, but you can feel it feels like one of those books that might end up being like a classic take on the character that you look back on as like, oh, I can hand this trade to somebody and be like, this is a really badass like Black Panther story that you would probably enjoy. And I just like, I appreciate really I don't know, like a unique take on a book. Another comic that I really appreciate a unique take on the book is Venom. Venom is my one of my honorable mentions, from Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman and friends. I'm just gonna say a blanket Donny Cates honorable mention, because his Thanos book was really good. I enjoy Redneck. The thing about his Marvel stuff though is like, this is gonna sound like a burn, but it's not a burn. He does like the most high end, batshit crazy fan fiction that's ever existed, and I love that. Like he has a real fearlessness to his writing, and I really appreciate that. Like the Venom stuff is really good. Ryan Stegman's killing it. I love their hype for it, where they're saying it's like better than Watchmen, and then they actually got Dave Gibbons to do a variant cover that looks like Watchmen for it, which is hilarious. I'm just gonna list through my stuff really quick. A couple graphic novels. Is This Guy for Real by Box Brown, which is the biography of Andy Kaufman. It's really good. Amulet Volume 8, the 8th book in the series by Kazuo Kibuishi. Cemetery Beach, a new series from Warren Ellis and Jason Howard. Honestly, like when you start getting into the top 20, tiebreakers are a big thing, and its big thing was it's only 3 issues. Gideon Falls, I really like that, from Jeff Lemire and Andrea Sorrentino. Murder Falcon, another book that just didn't have a lot of issues, but I love it. Daniel Warren Johnson is a genius. Nancy, the old syndicated comic, is hilarious this year, and I really enjoyed it. And the most shocking, perhaps, exclusion from my list is Mr. Miracle, but it is an honorable mention for me. I really enjoyed it. Probably my favorite part of the entire series was Darkseid eating from a veggie tray. Apparently he's a double dipper. I knew that dude was evil. Anyways,
it doesn't get much more evil.
No, I mean, that's disgusting. Can you imagine how disgusting Darkseid's mouth is? Oh God! Like, what does he eat normally? Like, is he gonna have like stomach problems because he had vegetables? I don't think they have a lot of vegetables on Apocalypse.
Oh, I can only imagine that Omega breath.
Oh, it's so disgusting. I mean, like, he doesn't need like the Omega sanction to kill people. He just needs to breathe on them.
Right.
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah. So those are my honorable mentions. Do you want to kick us off with your number 20 pick?
Sure. My number 20 pick was Multiple Man by Matt Rosenberg and Andy MacDonald. That book was just super fun.
It was really fun.
It was just so much fun. Matt Rosenberg had the voice down for Madrox so well, too. Like the humor and everything, and just the ridiculousness of all of it. We got to see Layla Miller again, so a little fan service. But,
and the kid. They had a kid.
Yeah. Like it was really good. I really enjoyed it. I don't know what else to say. Like, it just was really fun. Just the ridiculousness of people coming back in time and stuff. Like phalanx, cable, and stuff like that. Just wild ideas. Like, they just went for the fences and
Yeah.
didn't care, and it made it so much fun. And that was kind of what I was talking about earlier with like the experimentation this year. Like, some of that's in the big two. Like, they were just kind of like, yeah, let's do something a little crazy.
Yeah.
And so that to me is really appreciated, because those are the kind of things, like you mentioned, like that eventually somebody's going to remember as a classic. Instead of redoing somebody's classic, do something new. And this was fun and new. I mean, we've seen a lot of Multiple Man, a lot of X Factor for a while there, but we haven't seen this.
Well, that's why I really appreciate what they did with Multiple Man, is that I think a lot of people just wanted more of the X Factor Jamie. You just wanted, and there was even me to a certain degree. I was hoping it would have, Layla in a more substantial manner, but what they delivered was better than what I had hoped for and what I expected. It did not make my list, but it is a very good book. And like the mad ideas, like you were talking about, the mashing up like of the Deadpool Wolverine Jamie
Yeah.
and all that stuff, like those were like that's kind of what I was saying with Donny Cates, where it's just like these are crazy ideas, and I appreciate like the go for it gusto that they approach these stories with. Like, that is really fun. And also I love that it like was deeply tied to one of X-Men's favorite and most horrifying tricks, which is time travel.
Yes.
And also I have to say, one of my favorite moments of the entire year in comics was in that comic. I think it was the first issue, and like Jamie and one of his dupes were fighting in front of Beast, and Beast was like, "Hey, stop it.
Yeah.
This is why everybody hates you. Like, stop being weird." And I was just like, oh my God, that is hilarious.
Yeah. And the covers on the book were fantastic too. Like,
Oh, totally.
That book was a home run.
Yeah, it was a really good book. I really liked it. It was on one of my original lists, but it just didn't end up making it. But I did really like that book. Number 20 for me is a Gone But Not Forgotten series from Image. I think it made my list last year. It's Sebastian Gerner and Galad's Scales and Scoundrels, which is an all ages book that had beautiful painterly art from Galad. And it just like, it was, I don't know, like sometimes, how you have those, like there's a movie or TV show or like comic or whatever where you just kind of enjoy spending time with these characters. And it's not necessarily like the most incredible plot that's ever existed, but it's just like, these are good characters that have good stories told about them. They're not going to necessarily have like end of the world stakes, but it's just a fun read. This was just like a really interesting world that Sebastian Gerner and Galad created, that had this excellent character, Luvander, who was a dragon in human form, effectively. That was just, I don't know. I mean, it was a really charming fantasy read. I really enjoyed it. I appreciated the imagination and the inventiveness in it. And I don't know, it was just great. And it was a beautiful book. Galad's art is tremendous. So that's my number 20. My number 19 is, I'm going to say that it is Action Comics by Brian Michael Bendis, Patrick Gleason, Yannick Paquette, Ryan Sook, and a whole bunch of other people. But I do want to say that it is like largely representative of Bendis's overall Superman take. Mm-hmm. I've really enjoyed it. I didn't really like Man of Steel very much, but I picked up both of these books despite that. And Action Comics in particular has been a really good and really fun read. Like the Daily Planet connection has been great. Like the new characters have been really fun. And it's just been a really well told story so far. Plus the art. I mean, you got Ryan Sook, you got Patrick Gleason, you got Yannick Paquette with Nathan Fairbairn on colors. I mean, oof, it's good. It's good stuff. And the Superman stuff's been fun too. Like, I enjoyed the weird subplot of Adam Strange wondering where the Earth went in that book. Like, that was super fun. He's just like, guys, where is everybody? Where's the Earth? This is where it's supposed to be, I swear. And it was like actually in the Phantom Zone, which is hilarious. Yeah, I mean, I was dubious about Bendis on the Superman books, and he has proven me to be very wrong. It's been a really great run so far. What do you got for 19?
Quick take. I actually really enjoyed Man of Steel, but haven't loved Action or Superman.
Interesting.
Yeah, I thought that when you said that too. I was like, oh, that's interesting. We're on the flip side of that. I don't know why. I like that short, quick take that he had on, but I don't dislike his run. It just didn't make my list. But
yeah.
But yeah, so I just thought that was interesting. My number 19 is The Sentry by Jeff Lemire, Kim Lemire, Josh Cassar. Lemire, you say?
You're horrible.
I am. I'm an awful person. How can I stop now? But yeah, I loved this book. Obviously, I love the Sentry. Obviously, I love Jeff, and he just took the Sentry and just dragged him through the mud and took him to like a real dark place. His sidekick Scout comes back and like tries to obliterate him, and then like the Void and him come to an agreement, and now he's like something beyond it all. Like flies off into space, like the way they left it off. Like I just can't wait to see more Sentry. You were the one that doesn't like the Sentry, right?
No, I hate the Sentry. Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
I don't. He's just such a funny character because I think Lemire is perfectly suited to actually deliver an interesting Sentry book, but I just like the character is so weird to me. He just I like my biggest problem with him is the fact that in every event they just have to write him out of it because like he would end the fight in like 2 seconds, or they would have to make him the villain. He was like basically a Deus Ex Machina. And
well, they basically like they changed his costume in this too, like the last issue.
Yeah.
He basically comes out looking like Supreme.
Like Supreme
The
is like the
Mark
Rob
Miller
Light. What?
Remember the or Superior.
Superior. Okay.
Yeah. It's like he's got a black cape, red suit, black hair. Like he doesn't look the same anymore.
Oh. Well,
So,
I would definitely be interested. I'll probably check it out on Marvel Unlimited because, like I said, I think Lemire would be really good at it. I don't know what it is about the Sentry though. Like, I actually wrote in my newsletter today. Like, I created a statistic that's like basically wins above replacement for baseball, except for it's like wins above replacement superhero, and the baseline for exactly mediocre is the Sentry.
you're the worst.
I'm just a hater. What can I say?
You are. I love me some Sentry. I was so stoked. I was not expecting to get a Sentry book. I just kind of assumed they just threw him away.
I mean, they did. Literally, they killed him. And then, like,
Yeah.
didn't he come back in Uncanny Avengers? Or what did he come back in? I don't even remember.
I think he came back in that God, what's it called? No Surrender.
Oh, okay.
Is that where he came back? I
Yeah.
honestly don't even remember. I know he came back recently though.
He's back, whatever. He's gonna be off like, oh no, my greatest threat is myself, the Void, oh no.
But now he's not worried about that stuff. Like
Oh,
he's like this weird calm, but he like flew out into space, so who knows?
That's what he does. Whenever things go bad, he's like, I'm gonna go to space. And I'm gonna rip Carnage in
doesn't
half on the way.
Yeah, that's exactly what it says. He doesn't realize Carnage already made his way back.
I gotta say, that was the greatest moment in Sentry history.
Yeah, just
Yeah, like when he rips Carnage in half in like New Avengers, I was like, this is a really good way to show that somebody's super tough. Is like when they literally rip Carnage in half.
it had wicked impact.
What was 18?
18 for me is another one of those books that was just fun. Old Man Hawkeye by Ethan Sachs and Marco Cicchetto. That book is just awesome. Like, I don't know if you'll ever read it or how much detail you want me to go into.
Go.
But like,
I mean, honestly, I might read it, but at the same time, I'm not super worried about spoilers for most things, let alone Old Man Hawkeye.
Fair enough. So the book is just basically a revenge murder story for Hawkeye.
So it's like John Wick.
Yeah, but he's going back and murdering the Thunderbolts because they all betrayed him.
Oh,
and
nice.
And there was a big cost to it for him personally. So he's going back and literally like executing all of the 90s Thunderbolts characters. Like, it's awesome as shit. And like, it's all building up to him fighting off with Bullseye. And you get to see, the other Hawkeye come through too. She's older now. You get to see how he gets blind leading into Old Man Logan. Like, it's rad. It's really rad.
Wait, which flavor of Thunderbolts are we talking about? Are we talking about like OG Thunderbolts, like Baron Zemo and like Songbird and everything like that? Okay.
Yeah, OG. Like, it's sick.
I actually love that Thunderbolts
5.
thing. Oh yeah.
Yeah, me too. I love it. And so it's cool. Like, and he's just no mercy. And some of the ways he kills them, you're like, oh my God. And in the next issue, they'll murder somebody even worse. So like, it's been great.
See, that's rude. A lot of those characters became heroes. How dare he? Mach 5, hero. Songbird, hero.
I would have killed him too after reading that book. Like, at first I was like, because at first you're like, man, what the hell is he doing? Like, why would you? And then you're like, oh, those motherfuckers gotta die.
So that is the sign of a good revenge book, is like when you're actively rooting for them to like commit to said revenge. It's like, yes, I'm rooting for you. I remember watching the new Hills Have Eyes movie, like the one that came out in like 2005 or whatever.
Yes.
Like that whole movie, you're just like, kill them all, get them.
Yeah.
Get revenge. Like,
he touched that baby, kill him.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, that is Like you got to root for him. Like John Wick, you're definitely gonna root for John Wick. You're like, you killed a dog, you deserve it. All of you deserve it. Baba Yaga is coming for you guys.
Yeah, and they do it in such this story. They do like all of the revenge kills are like big blockbuster style. Like they did it right. Like because at first I was like, I'll check it out, but I don't have a lot of high hopes for it.
Sure.
And then I was just blown away. And like the first couple issues didn't really even catch me all that much, but as it's progressed, like it's just been fun.
That's awesome. My number 18 is Farmhand by Rob Guillory and Taylor Wells. Old friend of the podcast, Rob Guillory. I knew a lot about this book coming in, but the execution of it has been awesome. I really, really enjoy it. It's really cool seeing Rob being able, I mean, like him and John Layman combined really well to make an awesome book, but Rob being able to be on his own, like seeing him put himself in the book and seeing him like tell a story that's his own, that has his trademark humor, but also has like the heart and the family elements to it, has been really great. And like it's a really inventive book. It's like there's a lot of really cool ideas in it, and the end of the first arc was really fantastic in the way it's going to, well, I'm just going to say literally spread into other directions that we might not see coming from the first arc. But it's really well thought out. It's really fun. It's loaded with all the traditional like things we hope for from a Rob Guillory comic. And I love his art. He's just, people might look at his stuff and think it's cartoony, but he's just such a good storyteller. He like really makes you connect with characters through his art. He makes you laugh through his art. He makes you feel through his art. He's just a great artist. Number 17 for me was, I think it might have been my number one book last year, is Kaiju Max by Xander Cannon. Kaiju Max is a fantastic book. I love it. The fourth season, which is going on right now, takes place in the women's wing of the Kaiju Max prison. So it's kind of like Orange is the New Black, but with kaiju. And it's alternately like funny, but also like just really deeply like affecting. I talked about this in the last podcast because the latest issue was in my top 5 for November, but the third issue of season 4 has the final moments in this book are just so well set up by the previous 3 seasons plus of the comic, and it's like built off of so many of these character moments, and like you're starting to feel hopeful for these characters, and then they're like, "Nah, we're dunking on you. That's coming, that's coming," and you're just like, "Oh my god, Xander Cannon." Such a monster, but I love it. It's like I feel good to feel bad from your amazing storytelling. It's a remarkable comic. I love it. What is 17 for you?
17 for me is Astonishing X-Men.
So like the Rosenberg stuff?
Okay, so from the Rosenberg all the way back to the Soleil.
Okay.
I've just let it continue on because the numbering hasn't changed. So
Sure.
I'm letting it roll. And honestly, even if the numbering had changed and it was remaining the same, at this point, Marvel, as long as you keep the name same, Brandon puts it in the box the same, which means it gets put together the same. I'm done with all this finding other places in the box. So Astonishing X-Men, the Soleil stuff, honestly, it was okay, but every issue with a new artist was a little like disorienting after a while.
They also did not jive at all.
No, and like that book kind of hurt my head a little bit. But honestly, the Rosenberg Greg Land stuff has been really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Greg Land's like over the top Dazzler just works so well and things like that. I think just the characters and like Havoc trying to be a good guy but also being an asshole, like it just works. And Rosenberg really, you can tell he's an X-Men fan. Like he really has these voices down. It's just really fun. When I pick up one of his books and it's an X-Men book, I know typically I'm going to enjoy it. Like he's got the voice for the characters that I hear in my head too, it feels like. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I feel like that's the reason why, because he's taken over Uncanny after like the weekly ends. I feel like him and Kelly Thompson and Ed Brisson all really get the characters really well.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
They understand these characters really well. I don't know if Uncanny. I mean, Uncanny is a tough thing to do. It's like they're doing X-Men Disassembled over 10 issues of a weekly issue or weekly book. I mean, that's tough to like with 3 different writers. That's tough to really make like excellent. But I think you can see on their individual books how much they get and care for these characters, but also how good of writers they are.
Yeah, and that's what I was saying when I was talking about Uncanny is, individually I really enjoy their stuff, but I think they're also kind of hamstrung with this, Uncanny X-Men stuff because it's building to something that they probably didn't plan. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
they're having to just kind of steer the ship that they've already been steering, but their books are gone, so now they put them on Uncanny.
Hmm.
Like, so I mean they're definitely hamstrung. But yeah, I think their voices are some of the best X-Men writing voices we've had in a long ass time.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And so yeah, so his book was just fun. Like they're not really X-Men. Like the whole running thing was like Kitty said they couldn't be called X-Men because Havoc was supposed to be a bad guy.
Well,
So like the whole
why
time,
is Havoc a bad guy now? I'm like apparently out of the loop. I love Havoc.
oh dude, this is old school. This was from whatever that one was. The personalities got flipped.
Oh, I know Axis. Yeah. Wait.
Axis, that's what it was. Yeah.
Was he flipped in that and he just never got better like Sabretooth? Like, or I
Yeah,
guess Sabretooth he didn't get worse.
exactly.
That's yeah. That's just funny. I think it's funny that like they just never fix those things. It's like I guess Havoc's a bad guy now.
Yeah. Well, they did it. They did finally fix it.
Okay,
And
good.
then like yeah, they finally fixed it and they converted him back. But then like he comes back to X-Men Kid. He's like, nah, man, you can't be on the team. So he goes about like putting together a team, but keeps telling him like, but we're not the X-Men. Like it's just a running thing. But it was a solid team. Yeah, and Rosenberg, just the voice. I'm not hurting that he's going to be taking over Uncanny X-Men.
That's awesome. Well, and also Sal LaRocca. Sal LaRocca is a really. I mean, wasn't he? Was he the Cecilia Reyes era artist?
He was with Claremont.
Yeah, that like I remember the. I mean, I know you're. What was it? Thunderbird 4.
Yeah, buddy, I love that guy in Lifeguard and Slipstream. Let's get wild, baby.
See, this is why you liked Astonishing because it was like Havoc had to get a C-list team, and you're like, yeah, give me those C-list X-Men, baby.
Dude, for real though, like honestly, like I don't understand. If I'm an X-Men writer, yeah, do I want to write like the X-Men animated team? Absolutely. You know what I'd also really like to do is have some B C list characters that I could like enact some actual change on
Yeah.
and just do some work with. And the X-Men books are just ridiculously ripe with characters. Like it's stupid.
Yeah, I mean, they're already the Misfits, but you kind of want like the Misfits within the Misfits.
Yeah, like I love that Brisson over in like Old Man Logan, he plays with Glob Herman all the time. Like, and you'll see him pop up even in other things that he's done. Like, it's just great. I love that he's really taking that character and he's like putting some spotlight on him.
I do have to say, I've heard good things about West Coast Avengers, but I miss our boy QQ. Quentin Quire. Where's he at amongst all this? All the X-Men stuff's going on, and he's over on the West Coast Avengering? Ugh.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't read West Coast Avengers. I've also heard good things, but yeah, I haven't read it at all. I didn't even know he was over there.
He is. I think he's like dating Gwenpool. I've heard good things about Gwenpool too. That book was supposed to be really good. I've not read it yet, but what is your 16?
16 is X-Men Blue.
Ooh.
That book. So Gold did not make my list. Red did not make my list. Blue made my list. But kind of like Astonishing X-Men, the main reason it made my list was kind of after they flipped the OG5 out of there, and they started playing with a different cast. So it was like OG Cyclops, Bloodstorm Storm from Mutant X. You had Polaris, Zorn.
Zorn?
Yeah, Dakin.
Wait, like Magneto Zorn or like proper Zorn?
Like proper Zorn.
Okay.
And then you had, I think Blindfold was in there for a hot minute, and then Jimmy Hudson, the Ultimate Universe Wolverine. Like, so they just had this like weird hodgepodge cast that like ended up going up against Magneto, who finally became a villain again. Which I don't know what you and Matt's bet was, but it finally happened.
I don't remember. I don't remember the bet. What was the bet?
You guys had a bet about Magneto going bad again.
I'm guessing I was the one who said that he was going to go bad.
I don't remember who, but I remember you guys had an ongoing thing with that early on in Multiversity. But anyway, yeah. So finally he went bad, and I don't know. I dug it. So it's weird with both those books. It's like once they kind of deviated from what they'd already been doing, it got better.
Who was the creative team on that? Like on the new one?
X-Men Bun or
X-Men Bun.
X-Men Blue was Colin Bunn, and I mean, basically was X-Men Bun. I mean, it was his book.
Yeah.
And R.B. Silva on art, Jorge Molina and Marcus Toe for the most part.
I like all those artists.
Yeah, I do too. Like, it was a fun book. And man, Cyclops, OG Cyclops, and Bloodstorm from the Mutant X universe, like falling in love was kind of a trip. Like that was fun.
I actually
Um,
like in Extermination, I guess spoilers. But I mean Extermination, like Bloodstorm dies, and like I had no experience with that like at all, and I was just like, I actually they really had a convincing relationship from the jump. Like
yeah,
it worked.
yeah, they did a really good job of like making it. I mean, like Colin Bunn getting it to that point too. Like I don't know, it was cool. I enjoyed it. I think this last run of X-Men comics, like the Color series, we'll call them, I guess, like they were all right, but most of them weren't great. You
Right.
know, and so I'm ready for this era to kind of move on and see what comes out. You know, post Age of X-Men.
I think it's funny that you call '05 Cyclops OG Cyclops, despite the
Mm-hmm.
fact I think you could call the other one OG Cyclops, although the OG Cyclops is dead. This is a very X-Men sentence I just said.
How would the other Cyclops be OG
Because he's the
Cyclops?
original one. Like the other one is like '05. He's like the young version, but he's not
The young
OG.
version is the original one. If you read the old Stan Lee stuff,
But I
they're
thought
well
I thought
teenagers.
it ended up being like they were technically from another universe or something. Oh my god,
I'm
X
guessing.
Men stuff is so wild.
I think they just blacked that out like I do on a Saturday night sometimes. Like they forgot that existed, man. Like that doesn't even because now they're talking about bringing them back in time again. Like that's what they're doing right now. So
Yeah,
it's like yeah, that's Marvel.
we're just gonna drop you off in 1963 and call it good.
Yeah, don't worry. All new, fresher Marvels coming.
Yeah, my number 16 is the one that I was gonna talk about. Basketball statistics on. It's Doctor Strange, by Mark Waid, Jesus Saiz, Javier Pina, and Andres Guinaldo. All right, so you ready for my weird explanation for this book?
Yes.
All right, so this book, if it was just the Jesus Saiz issues, or Jesus Saiz, or however you pronounce it exactly, this book would be in my top 10, maybe even my top 5. I loved it. Like the first arc was amazing. Like it was like a Doctor Strange is going to space because magic has left him and he's trying to find a new way to connect with magic. And the way that Mark Waid wrote it in Jesus Saiz's art was just like astonishing, was just like perfect. It felt like I was reading another like beginning of a legendary run. It was told in a way like the narration that was used was so fascinating, and it ended up resulting in the fact, well, spoiler alert, it ended up resulting in the fact that the person that was narrating it was another Doctor Strange who was observing this the whole time, so you didn't know who was who. And so the thing that really the thing that got me, and the reason why it's at 16 instead of like 6 or something like that, is because the fill-in artist Javier Pina was good. Andres Guinaldo did not fit like at all. He felt like he was doing an impression of Javier Pina, who was doing an impression of Jesus Saiz, and it was like in basketball, you know how there's like the plus minus like net ratings and everything like that for players, where it's like, oh, when they're on court, they're like +7, and when they're off, it's like, oh, they get killed. And so it's like this player, their net impact on the court was amazing. Like Jesus Saiz, he had like an off the charts like net rating. Like this book, you could see the impact of having a great artist on a book, because every issue, including this week's one, which was fantastic, that he worked on was just tremendous. Like I loved it. But the other ones like weighed it down because there was 2 artists working simultaneously in 2 different issues. They didn't jive well, and like I feel like the story suffered for it. And I mean, it's because artists are storytellers, and Jesus Saiz is like straight up one of my favorite artists, and losing him and having like replacements is gonna be tough. But then like when it just were artists that didn't particularly work for me besides Javier Pina, it was even tougher. So it like at its peak, it was like maybe a top 5, top 10 book for me, and at its low point, it was not even on my list. So
Wow.
it was a really weird book for me. It's like I recommend 6 of the 9 issues so far, or no, excuse me, 7 of the 9 issues so far wholeheartedly, and then 2 of them I'm just like like I almost dropped it because of that. So it was an interesting book, and it's like the positives massively outweigh the negatives,
Mm-hmm.
but it was just it's such a like an example as to how the fill-in artists can dramatically impact the quality of the comic. If they don't jive well with the existing artists, then it gets a little dicey. But man, Jesus Saiz, that guy is just absolutely killing it on that book. He is just astonishing. Have you read that at all?
You know, it's funny. I've been looking at it as it's been popping up on Marvel Unlimited, but I haven't gotten around to reading it. I had absolutely no clue Mark Waid was writing that, so that changes a lot for me.
Oh, you should read it. I mean, honestly, like
Yeah.
the Mark Waid is telling like it's my favorite Mark Waid written stuff since at least Daredevil in terms of Marvel, and then like beyond that, it's been a bit. And like Jesus, I mean, I'm pretty sure you like Jesus Saiz. He's done some really great
Yeah,
stuff. But man,
definitely.
that dude, he just kills it. But anyways, number 15 for me is The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl. Always a contender for me. Ryan Q. North, Erica Henderson, who's now off the book but not forgotten. Derek Charm and Rico Renzi. I will say that I think that issue number 31 was the best issue of Squirrel Girl of the entirety of its run. It was tremendous. It was heartfelt. It was very emotional. It was Erica Henderson's last issue, but it was what a final issue for her. And the rest of it, it's just a fun book. It's like, if this was just purely based off of enjoyment, like just like how much did I enjoy this comic, it would be a top 5 one for sure. Like I love it. It's so fun. But at the same time, it was a good year. And so it's a little further down my list. And also it might suffer a little bit from the metronome effect. It's like, I kind of, it's been around for a while. It's like, it's Greg Popovich. It's always up there. It's like, it's always could be coach of the year, but instead it's 15th on my list.
Yeah.
What is your 15?
Another Popovich, actually. This is a book that finished lower on my list than it has in previous years. Despite it, okay, so this year, I guess I didn't really go into this earlier, so I kept track of how many times I really thought an issue was like fun or had some kind of notable something and would add it to a list. So I kept track. So like I had 14 Star Wars issues this year that I enjoyed enough to, document their enjoyment. So
I take it this pick is Star Wars?
It is Star Wars, yeah. I buried the lead on this a little bit. So Star Wars. So, like, in previous years, it's been pretty high up. But this year, a lot of the issues got put on the list. But looking back, I'm like, man, I can't think of, like, a real moment that really, like, blows me away or stands out.
Mm-hmm.
But I also can't remember a moment that was, like, awful. Like, it's been really good. Kieran Gillen and Salvador LaRocca have just been, just rocking it. And I don't know. I love Kieran Gillen on this book. Like, I really wasn't a big fan of his work on Uncanny X-Men, but really love this work. Like,
man,
it's amazing to see.
His Darth Vader was
so good.
So good.
Dude, if Marvel has him under contract in any sort of capacity, he's not writing a Star Wars book, they're fucking up. Like, he just has Star Wars down so hardcore, it's not even funny.
Yeah. And he brings a lot of like spice and personality to it.
He does, and it doesn't feel like it's a retread on a bunch of stuff. It's a lot of unique new stuff, which is fun because he can do some of that now that the extended universe, that was previously established is gone. Like he can play around with it, and he doesn't take any hesitation to do so. It's great.
That's awesome.
Yep.
I'm not reading Star Wars. I need to catch up because like I loved his Darth Vader, and like I was excited he was doing it. I heard good things. Well, it might be on your list, but I heard good things about Charles Soule's Darth Vader. Have not read any of it quite yet, but I don't know. I'll catch up with it someday. Man, like that Darth Vader though, woo, that was so good.
Yeah, it was really good, and you're right. His the new Darth Vader is good too. It didn't make my list, but him and Carmine Giandomenico, he's doing art. Yeah, that book's been really solid. That's about to come to an end. I think there's only an issue left.
Oh, okay. What is 14 for you?
14 for me was Batman White Knight.
Okay.
I really, really enjoyed that book and really thought it would end up higher on my list. It just didn't. Like there's no real reason. Like it was one of those things where like when I was putting together a list, I was like, is that really where you're going to stay?
Yeah.
And I'd move things around and then I'd be like, oh, okay. Weird. Like, because in your head, and then I was, looking through issues again and just kind of, rehashing stuff because it ended a while ago. So I didn't want it to lose out just because it's been gone for a while and, maybe lost some effect. But even going through it, like, it just really didn't change much. But I really liked it. Sean Murphy killed it on that book. I liked, bringing in the additional Harley Quinn. I love the art as usual. His Batmobiles are always just phenomenal. And just overall great story and great piece of standalone work. Yeah.
I own it in trade. I had the first issue in single issues and I wasn't crazy about it. And then I bought it in trade and I've read the first 2 issues and I put it down and I started reading other things and I have not went back to read it yet. And I don't know what it is. It's just like, it doesn't really jive with me yet. I mean, I'm going to try to finish it. I'm going to finish it. I mean, I have the capacity to finish it as a human being, but I don't know what it was about it. It just didn't work for me. But it does seem very up your alley because it did have a lot of homages to like previous Batman stuff.
Batman animated series. Sean Murphy's so good at throwing in '90s Batman.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I mean, like, didn't like the version of Harley Quinn he brought back? Wasn't it just basically animated Harley Quinn?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's funny that you mentioned like so because I kept track of the issues for it. So issues 4 through 8 made it on my list. The first 3 issues, I really wasn't digging it either.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But
Yeah. Like, so maybe I need to go into it.
Caught on. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It just I don't know what it was, but yeah, I'm gonna have to check it out because I've heard good things. I love Sean's art. He's a phenomenal artist. I just was like, the setup was really kind of. I don't know. I just wasn't feeling it. So maybe I just need to push a little bit further and get into it because I've heard lots of good things, not just from you.
Yeah, it really picked up its pace. It was enjoyable. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, and man, you're not kidding. Like that guy draws cars well, period. And being able to draw the Batmobile is it's up his alley.
I want more punk rock. Jesus.
I don't think you're gonna get that anytime soon.
I don't think so either. Never.
You know he's doing like an Azrael book or something like that next. Like
no, so he was tricking people. That's the continuation of White Knight, but it's gonna have like an Azrael type character in it too.
No, that's fine. I think it is Azrael though. I didn't mean it was going to be like starring Azrael. I mean like he's going to be in it. But yeah, no, I know that. I think that's the continuation, and I think he's supposed to do like Batman First Night or something like that with Snyder.
Yeah,
but anyways,
they're all supposed to be on the DC Dong label, right? I mean Black label, right?
yes, it's supposed to be. We'll see if that ends up happening that way.
Yeah. That sounds like that plan's gone limp.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Ouch. Woo. Brandon bringing the heat. Like he can bring anything else. Who am I kidding?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Number 14 for me is The Prince and the Dressmaker by Jen Wang, which is a second graphic novel. It's the story of a girl who makes beautiful dresses and gets recruited by the prince to make dresses or make clothes. And I don't really want to say too much about it, but what I will say is first off, Jen Wang is absolutely one of my favorite cartoonists. She has so much life in her art. Her character work is phenomenal. Like she did this graphic novel a few years ago called Coco Be Good that I absolutely loved as well. But like in this one, it has that flair in all over the place. Like her art is just beautiful throughout. But like the story itself is really heartfelt. It's like it's a really, really like unexpected story. Like that's why I don't really want to talk about the plot too much because it just it's just like it zigs when you think it's going to zag, and it becomes something much different, and it becomes more about like accepting the people in your life and understanding people who are different than you and everything. And it's just it feels like a Hayao Miyazaki story to a certain degree, just like a really low key one. And I loved it. I thought it was amazing. Like it really. I thought it was going to finish higher on my list. It was another one that just actually, it kind of like dropped down the list a little bit. And I have to say, I got to at least in part blame the fact that I actually couldn't find it. Like I own the book, but I have no idea where it is in my house. And
blame the earthquake.
The earthquake. A reminder to listeners, I live in Anchorage, Alaska, so I had a very fun week. But yeah, apparently the earthquake, the only thing it swallowed up in my house was my copy of The Prince and the Dressmaker, which makes me sad because I really like that book. At the same time, all things considered, not bad for an earthquake.
Yeah, definitely. You could have got off a little worse.
Yeah, for sure. Number 13 for me is an always contender for this list. It's John Allison and Max Sarin's Giant Days, which is a Boom Studios series. It alongside The Unbeatable Squirrel Girl, it is one of those books that would finish much higher on my list if it's just pure enjoyment. But it is such a fun and funny comic. Basically, it's about 3 girls growing up together in college in Britain. And it's just all about like the ridiculous things that they get into in college. And it's really fun because it's like I can see myself in a lot of the stories. And like, I wasn't British growing up, and I wasn't growing up during the period that they were growing up, but it's like all those experiences in college are so quintessential, and you can see yourselves in it. And it's got really human writing, human storytelling, and like very well drawn characters by the entire creative team. John Allison is the funniest scriptwriter in comics. I think he's hilarious, and it's really well done. Like the cartooning, the art on the book just has so much life and vitality to it, and I just love it. It's such a joy to read. And like sometimes, a lot of times I like my erudite, like, thoughtful comics and everything like that. But sometimes you just want to have a good time, man. And Giant Days is one of the best times, and I love that. I think you would enjoy it. I think you'd enjoy it quite a bit. You could see yourself in some of the characters, I'm guessing.
As British college schoolgirls.
Oh, you are definitely a British college schoolgirl. Out of anybody I know, you are definitely the most British college schoolgirl that I know. I almost said squirrel girl. What do you got for number 13?
My number 13 is Doomsday Clock by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank.
Oh.
Let me start out by saying I don't 100% know what the hell is going on in this book.
Always a great start. Always a great start.
Not by a long shot. I just don't want anybody to think I'm coming across knowing what the hell's going on, because I don't.
Like, in what sense? Like you literally don't understand the story, or like what is going on with the Watchmen or whatever, or what?
Yeah, like where the Watchmen are coming into play, because it's been a pretty slow boil. A super enjoyable slow boil, but a slow boil. Like, I want to see more of, like, we're at 8 issues out of 12, right? Is it 12 issues?
I think so, yeah.
So it's like you got 4 more issues, a quarter left, and we still haven't hit like that peak, to like come down from, or even like jump up from. You had a little bit of the are you reading it?
No.
Okay. So you had a little bit of like Manhattan and Superman, like a little bit of that. This last issue was really good with Firestorm, a little bit of Black Adam, though I love. But like overall, where it fits into the time, like why it fits in, how much like impact the Watchmen have had on the past, because they're really implying there was a lot of tomfoolery, like including Superman's death with the dates that they've got included and stuff.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, so like, and that's where for me, like, I don't really necessarily know what's going on, but I'm kind of having fun piecing this together.
Yeah,
and it's such a Jeff Johns book, and I love Jeff Johns. And in the like a lot of use of classic characters like Ronnie Raymond, Firestorm, and just the very particulars of that type of stuff. And then you've got Gary Frank, whose art is just incredible. And they both work so well together. And I don't know, I'm not a purist. Like, I don't really care like that Watchmen is interfering. I just hope that there's like a real solid point to it.
Right.
And we're going somewhere, because I don't want to have read all this and had all this build up over all these years now for it to just be a giant cash grab. I'm going to be pissed.
Well,
like they're going to burn a reader there. I mean, it's definitely a cash grab. Don't get me wrong, no matter what. But give me something for my cash grab.
Yeah, I like that's one thing that kind of always bugs me with these big like one-shot issues that like launch a new direction and everything like that. It was like when Flashpoint ended and they introduced Pandora, and she was supposed to be so essential, and she was like nothing. She was like nothing. And then like apparently Pandora was like actually being like she was being a subcontractor for Dr. Manhattan in some capacity, and so he like erased her in like the universe special. And then they find like Batman finds like the Watchmen button or whatever in like the Batcave. I'm like, how'd that get there? Just explain that.
With the Flash.
Yeah, or like Return of like Marvel Legacy, when Wolverine comes back and he's in a beer truck and he's got a like Infinity Stone. I'm like, just explain it. Like, why does it have to be so long and drawn out? Like, I don't know. I mean, I hope that they explain that, because I just feel like there's a really low hit rate on these big wow moments in these one shots, and I'd like it to pay off for once.
I agree. I will say, though, the Wolverine and the beer truck was pretty excellent. The only way that could have got better is if Stone Cold Steve Austin was sitting next to him.
Yeah.
Like, that was such a ridiculous return, but it worked so well.
Oh, no,
but then it got drawn out forever and ever and ever, and we're still going through it. Like, we've had like 3 miniseries to get to this miniseries before there's probably another miniseries.
Well, and the Watchmen button was in Rebirth Special, which was 2.5 years ago.
Well, they touched on it after that, though, because there was the button, which was Flash and Batman, and periodically, like, they drop little Easter eggs in Batman and Flash. It's interesting. Like, I wonder how much those writers coordinate sometimes.
Oh, they do a lot. I mean, Josh Williamson is taking over Batman for 2 issues, so Tom King can step out for a little bit. And so, like, they those two jive really well together. And, like, I think they can, like, they know each other's stories pretty well, and they can cover for each other, which is pretty great. I don't know. I don't want to say that I didn't enjoy that Marvel Legacy appearance, though. I love that. It's just a payoff. Like, give me a little bit. Give me a little bit.
Yeah, but they're like Doomsday Clock is starting to pay off for me recently, because they started implying the Justice Society, and then now this issue, like, you get to see footage of them. So like they're doing that kind of stuff, and the mime and the marionette those are two of the coolest new original DC villains I've seen in a long time.
Oh,
Like
cool.
they're wicked. Like they're I don't even know how to describe them. They're like crazy. It's like this chick and then her mute counterpart who's a mime, looks like a giant buffed out mime, and she looks like a painted up doll marionette,
Hmm.
and she's basically his controller, but not. They're just kind of in love. And so like it's just, but they're like the Joker kind of mix. I don't know. It's hard to explain, but they're super really good.
Nice.
Like that's one of the best parts coming out of there. And JSA.
Uh, what's your number 12?
Number 12 is Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. Another one of those books where like the series was like consistently enjoyable. I think Robert Venditti did a really good job in his run in that book, and his run on Green Lantern in general spans before this Hal Jordan and the Jail Corp. And I think he's had a pretty good run. At first, I think it was hard for him to transition in because he was the guy that came in after Johns.
Hmm.
Like that's a hard act to follow. And so I think once he found his own footing, he just kind of ran away with it and did a great job. And with this book being every 2 weeks, the fact that he was able to keep up that consistency, it was pretty great. I mean, he had some pretty good artists too, like Brandon Peterson, Ethan Van Sciver, Rafa Sandoval. So I mean, he had some good artistic talent in there, but it consistently stayed awesome. But kind of on that same level, like it never like really blew up for me or got bad. It just stayed consistently good, so it didn't really make it into my top 10 as a result.
Sure. My number 12 is a book that I really wanted to fit into the top 10. It just didn't work out. I love it. It's an amazing book. It's Immortal Hulk by Al Ewing, Joe Bennett, and a bunch of other artists like who have been. I just want to say, quick shout out to Immortal Hulk for integrating fill-in artists in a way that makes sense and giving Joe Bennett time to make it work. But that book is so awesome. It is like the best Hulk book I've read in an extremely long time. It's such a like it's like the perfect example of how you use continuity, and like there's like so many great moments, and there's so many great like the whole storyteller or the whole story that's going on is just like so engaging and so original for what the Hulk should be. And like the most recent, I mean, like the last couple issues have been absolutely bananas, like just absolutely insane. And like Al Ewing makes it work. Like he is so good at taking a massive idea and making it human and making it like digestible, even if it involves like taking the Hulk and separating him into different bottles, like like totally dismembering him and like leaving him in a lab and like him finding a way out of it because he's just like terrifying. Like basically, like I don't know if you're reading it, but
I'm not. I've been waiting to catch up on it.
oh man, you're gonna love it. Like it's basically the Hulk, if the Hulk was really smart, but he's also like kind of like evil. Like he uses it. I don't know. It's really dark. It's a really dark book. It's a really like basically it's like Banner lives by day and then Hulk takes over at night, and like that's their divide. And it's actually like a genuinely frightening book at times, and it's great. Like you're gonna love it.
Nice.
Number 11 for me is Eternal, which is a graphic novella from Black Mask Studios with art and story by Eric Zawadzki and written by Ryan K. Lindsay and color by D. Cuniff. It's a story of a Viking shield maiden who basically goes. I mean, it's a revenge story in the same vein that you were talking about earlier, but it's like Eric Zawadzki is just an astonishingly good artist. Like the whole thing is just so beautiful. Like the way he lays out pages, the way that like all of the character work he does, the action sequences. It's just one of the most astonishingly beautiful comics you could possibly find this year. I love that it's a one-shot graphic novella. It's like very much up my alley in format, but it wouldn't work if it was just that. It's just a really powerful story that has, I don't know. It's like a fable that will like live on, like in my memory well beyond this. And like that seems crazy that it's at 11 given the compliments I'm giving it, but I don't know. It was a good year, and I love that book. I think you would really really like it. I want to track down a copy and give it to you because it's really really badass, and the art is astonishing. What is your number 11?
My number 11 is Old Man Logan. Ed Brisson and is it Brisson? Brisson?
It's Brisson.
Brisson. Ed Brisson. I think he's got Wolverine's voice down better than anybody has in a long time. Like, I know this isn't, quote, our Wolverine, But of recent times, like this is the only Wolverine. Like
Right.
I understand. Well, I mean, well, before everybody gets mad at me, I know that Laura was Wolverine for a hot minute too, but we all knew that wasn't going to stick when real Wolverine came back. Come on now.
That book was really good though.
That book was hella good.
Yeah.
I don't really love that they went back to X-23 to be honest with you, but I knew she wasn't going to stay at Wolverine. Like,
Right.
give her own identity at this point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, that book was really good. That was Tom Taylor, right?
Yep.
Yeah, dude, he killed it. Yeah, but over on this book, just like the gruffness and just like the throwdown battles, but this is a nice weakened Wolverine. Like the healing factor is not working so well. So for a long time, like his right or left eye is all fucked up and he can't see. And you just slowly are building up to the point now where they're doing that little limited series to kill him off, I guess is the plan. But yeah, overall it's been solid. I mean, this is after the Lemire run, which is really
very
good.
good.
There you go, which was really solid. So overall, man, I've enjoyed Old Man Logan. I think it's definitely time to put him to pasture. That time has kind of moved on now that hopefully we'll get old Fireclaws back.
I just want to say really quick that I love that they just call it Dead Man Logan.
Yeah,
That's
the
great.
first issue was pretty good though. Like I don't know, I've enjoyed it. Like it's definitely time to go, but but it's been fun.
Yeah.
And then the throwdown fight with the Maestro where he just slices his head clean off. That was rad.
That's awesome. What about 10?
All right, number 10 for me is Avengers No Surrender.
Oh.
I actually thoroughly enjoyed that. I had not been reading Avengers or anything like that for a while leading up to that. I just really didn't care, wasn't super interested, thought I'd give it a shot. I mean, you got people, let's see, who's on this cast? You got Mark Waid, Al Ewing, Jim Zubkovich. I think he's just going by Jim Zub, though, now. And then, like, Pepe Larraz, Kim Jacinto, Mike Perkins, Paco Medina on art. I mean, you had a pretty good quality squad, and they did a good job of, like, if you're going to rotate out artists, do it in a way that works. And they really did do that. But yeah, I thought it was super solid and kind of underrated with the talent they have. Again, you got Mark Waid and Al Ewing and Jim Zub. Like, that's a pretty solid trio. And now they're going to come back and do it again.
I heard it was a really solid book. I need to read it now. That I think it's probably on Unlimited now, so I need to jump in on that. But I heard good things. It was just the weekly thing. Like, it's like committing to a weekly can be a lot. And yeah, I don't know. I'll catch up on it, but I did hear it's a good classic Avengers type story.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and like they introduced new characters that may or may not come to play later. I'm guessing they will, obviously with this new series. But yeah, it was super fun. I liked it.
My number 10 is also a Marvel book. It's Runaways from Rainbow Roll, Chris Anka, Matthew Wilson. I love that book. It's I would say it's my favorite Runaways since Brian K. Vaughan and Adrian Alfona, but some people would say that's not much. I mean, I really like the Catherine Immonen and Sarah Pichelli stuff, but this book is just like, I mentioned earlier about how I like hangout books. I like books where I just, these characters I enjoy being around, and that is the perfect hangout book. It is like, I love these characters. They're told perfectly. Chris Anka is fantastic. It has one of my favorite small sections of any comic this year, in this like segment that's just old lace going around the mansion trying to like bother all the other characters. It's a really charming book, and like maybe there's not a lot of big action or anything like that, but I don't need that. It's Runaways. Runaways was never about big action. It was about like human drama. It was about these kids dealing with this crazy situation. It's really good. I love it.
If I could say something real quick, I'm with you 100%. Did not make my list, but again, just because it's a good year. But yeah, that was a really, really solid book.
Yeah. Number 9 is the conclusion of a comic that has been one of my favorite comics in recent years. It's Wild's End. The final volume, which was told instead of in single issues, it was in trade, is called Journey's End, which is very fitting. It's a pitch perfect conclusion to a story that I really, really loved. It's by Dan Abnett and Inge Colbert. I'm sorry. I don't properly know what to go with on your name. I'm horrible. But it's like Colbert is just an astonishingly good artist. The cartooning in it is beautiful. Like it's been going for 2 volumes. This 3rd volume perfectly concludes everything that preceded it. It's a lovely, lovely story about alien invasion and some characters that are anthropomorphic animals rolling around the British countryside that I just really love. Like, if not saying that like the end all be all for any story is that it should be adapted into something, but this would be a really, really fantastic like animated movie or animated series that's just like a finite series. It's really, really great, and I'm so happy that they had an opportunity to conclude it because I would have been really sad if they didn't. Telling it in a trade was an interesting way to do it, and I don't care how they did it. They could have done it in like comic strips that was only in the Anchorage Daily News, and I would have been happy to read it. It's a great book. I love it. Yeah, I'm sad that there won't be any more coming, but that's okay. What's your number 9?
Number 9 for me comes from a gentleman that you've mentioned a couple times, Donnie Cates.
Ooh.
Cosmic Ghost Rider.
Ooh, that is a very Brandon title.
I fucking love that book. That was if any book on my list this year was the book that personifies like most surprised me or how did you get so far up on the list, it's that book. Like it was going wherever it wanted to go and I couldn't stop it. Like it was just so much fun. It kind of similar to the Multiple Man story with the time travel and stuff like that, but and also the craziness, and that's kind of where the comparisons end. But it's so much fun. Like you've got the Punisher as the cosmic Ghost Rider carrying around baby Thanos, trying to teach him a better way, but in the end messing it up entirely and creating so much bad shit. Like it is so good. Like, and I love that. I don't know how it's working, but he's going to be part of the Guardians of the Galaxy now.
Yeah, I don't care as long as it seems like it's gonna be a great book and he's fun.
Yeah,
So I'm into it.
I was looking at the cast of that book, and I was like, I love like almost all of these characters, and I can't remember the last time I read a Guardians of the Galaxy book. I was like, I'm in.
Yeah.
This looks fantastic, and he's writing, right?
Yeah, Donny Cates and then Jeff Shaw, the guy who did the Thanos book that he did. Did you read the Thanos book that led into Cosmic Ghost Rider?
I didn't.
Oh, it's on Unlimited now. You should read it. It's
Okay.
really, really good. It's called Thanos Wins, and it's just basically about how like no matter what, everyone always knows that in the end Thanos wins. And then he's going to be like the last remaining person. And it introduces Cosmic Ghost Rider, and it's really fun. I think you'd like it a lot.
I was wondering where he came from. I was like, this is so wild. They just threw this out there. Okay, so it did come from something.
Yeah, it's on Unlimited. It like starts with issue 13, I think, and it's really up your alley.
All right, I'll definitely check it out because that book was just fun as hell, and I love that Marvel took a chance on something like that.
Yeah. What's your number 8?
Number 8 is Captain America. And this spans 2 runs, basically, I guess. So you've got the initial run from Mark Waid with Chris Samney. Somney.
I really like that book.
Oh, my God. That when you were talking earlier, like the best Marvel Mark Waid, that to me is the best Marvel Mark Waid in a while. Like,
I honestly, like, I kind of forgot about that one because it became Leo Romero later on, and it just, like, it was more defined by the art for me than it was by the writing.
Yeah, I blacked out after the Mark Waid stuff up until Ta-Nehisi Coates came back.
And your boy Leinil Yu.
And Leinil Yu, yeah. So leading from the Samney Wade stuff over to Leinil Yu and Coates, like, oh my God, like this has been a fun ride. I love the current stuff. It reminds me a lot of like the Ed Brubaker era stuff. It's kind of got that more grimy, dark feel to it.
Yeah.
And I'm loving it. And yeah, anything Leinil Yu, you can guarantee I'm going to give you money for it. So yeah, great book. And it's continued all through the year, essentially, through multiple teams, which is not always how these Marvel books, when they relaunch, like sometimes such a drastic change, which this was, but it worked.
I'm rereading the Brubaker stuff right now. So you're like dead on in that comparison. It feels like Coates loves that run, but is like building off of it spiritually. It's a really good book. I've been enjoying it a lot.
That Brubaker era stuff is some of my favorite comics of all time. Like, so when he started messing around with that, and you had Leinil Yu, I was like, oh, yep, take all of my money and say keep going.
Number 8 for me is a graphic novel from First Second Books by Tilly Walden. It's called On a Sunbeam. And it's kind of hard to explain. It's like it has 2 different storylines that's going throughout. It's like one is a story of a young girl who's trying to find her way in like a new boarding school in space. Like this whole thing takes place in like in space basically. And then there's this other storyline where she's slightly grown up and she's joined this like crew of like space archaeologists who kind of restore old beautiful things in space. I think I should say in space more often. Anyways, but it's like these 2 interwoven storylines that are basically about this young girl finding herself and finding love. And it's a remarkably well told story that is both a great science fiction story, but also a great love story. That also, I mean, honestly, like this is going to sound like something that's sad, but it kind of made me understand modern society a little bit better, because it showed me a lot of practical application of like non-binary and transgendered characters and everything. And it's told in a real way that has a lot of empathy for the characters and a lot of understanding for this world, while also being a great science fiction yarn. It's a really good book. Tilly Walden is like 22 years old, and this comic is just outrageously good. She is just an insane talent. This is like her 5th graphic novel or something like that. It started as a webcomic, and I have no idea how she is that good so young. I was like an urchin when I was 22. It was an embarrassment to my family when I was 22. But anyways, it's a really good book. I love it. Number 7 for me is a big time surprise that came out of nowhere. I've talked about it a lot on the podcast lately. It's the terrible Elizabeth Dunn Against the Devils in Suits from Arabson and James Robinson. It's a Image adaptation of a book from Brazil, I think. And it's a one-shot graphic novel or graphic novella that's like, I don't know, 40 pages, 50 pages or something like that. That's about this girl whose dad made a deal with the devil, and she has been trained her entire life with the idea that she is going to be traded for the life of the guy's son. Like he doesn't like his daughter, but he loves his son and he wants to keep his son around. So he trades the son's life for the daughter. And it's about the daughter trying to like literally defeat the devil and regain her own life. And it's really badass. And the art by Arabson is like, I compared it recently to Raphael Grandpa meets Gary Larson from The Far Side. And
that's kind of interesting.
It is. It's a really good book. And it's like, you get like this, it's like an oversized book. It's like half again taller than a normal comic and half again wider than a normal comic. And it's I think it was like $5.99. And it's just like, it's such a good one-shot story. I wish there were more comics like it. I love one-shot stories that just, I don't know, just knock me on my butt and just rock. It's a great book. I love it. What is your number 7?
My number 7 is The Mighty Morphin Power Rangers by Kyle Higgins and predominantly Danielle D. Nicolo. I'm sorry, I know I'm messing your name up, bro. But that book, they went through a massive like crossover called Shattered Grid that like brought in all the different Power Rangers from all these different incarnations. It was just rad. Like it went on forever. Like it was like 11, 12 issues basically. So it was almost like the entire year. And it was like a massive Power Ranger battle royale. Like it was wild. Like it was just a lot of fun. And I think Kyle Higgins gets a huge shout out for making, like, I usually wouldn't read a Power Rangers book, to be honest with you, but he made it so superhero like. You would think the Power Rangers always seem like superheroes, but it's always more like 5 people go, they fight something, then like they get into a robot and they blow something up. Like,
I don't know what's wrong with that.
I mean, yeah, there's really
I'm just kidding.
But like there's not much to it. It's like rinse repeat, but he added a lot into it and like took some and added some depth to characters. And again, when you got a battle royale of just about every character, it's interesting because people are dying. So having said that, Shattered Grid ended and the series has kind of really fallen off. But Shattered Grid was rad.
That's awesome. What is your number 6?
Okay, number 6 for me. So we touched on how certain people writing X-Men books right now just get the voices of the characters.
Uh-huh.
Kelly Thompson is one of those people. And by me saying one of those people, I mean the person. Mm-hmm. Like, so the next book is Rogue and Gambit, the miniseries that she did.
Mm-hmm.
That was such a crazy, refreshing, awesome X-Men book. Like, it felt nostalgic in a way that it appealed to a lot of different people, a lot of us 90s kids too, I think, in particular.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, like, just, again, the voices, like, the way she does Gambit and Rogue is so perfect. And tying in all these elements and, like, the way they fix their past by almost doing, like, a weird couples therapy through the miniseries. Did you read it?
No, I need to.
So they do, like, this weird, essentially, a couples therapy type thing through the issues. And so it makes sense when they eventually get married, in X-Men, it's still kind of a jumble, but it makes sense. But she just is incredible, like absolutely incredible. If she would have taken over Uncanny X-Men, I'd have been pretty stoked, to be honest with you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like she really is a 90s X-Men fan, and I love every minute of it. But she nailed that book, and now she's doing Mr. and Mrs. X, and that's been pretty solid too. It's not as good as Rogue and Gambit, but Rogue and Gambit you could tell was like her love letter to the X-Men.
Yeah.
And it's kind of hard to top your love letter to something that you love as much as she apparently does. Because Jesus Christ, like you read like the 5 issues that I think that was, and you're just like, oh my God, like why is she not doing more X-Men books?
I had her on the. What's that?
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I had her on the podcast and we talked about this was back when she was doing Hawkeye, and I just asked her about, because I knew she was a big X-Men fan, and we talked about 90s X-Men and about how much she loved the animated series and everything, and how much she loved Rogue and Gambit and everything, and it was really cool having that conversation, and then seeing Rogue and Gambit get announced, and I was like, oh my God, she is gonna kill that book.
That's cool to hear, because yeah, I mean you can feel it in the book, like they're like tangible love letters. You can just feel it steaming off it. Like, and you don't run across that a lot anymore, I don't think. At least when it comes to the X-Men. There just isn't that heart to it. I think that's what the X-Men has really been lacking in recent years, just the heart. And man, she just took that and just like and just zapped that heart back in action, man. Like, I loved it. So when they put her on the current Uncanny X-Men stuff, and it's funny, like that's what I love about the Uncanny X-Men book. While it isn't amazing, you can see where like these different writers' voices are coming in on characters, and it's phenomenal. Like you can tell their distinct voices over the tapestry of the book. Like it's cool. But anyway, yeah. So Rogue and Gambit, that was my next book.
Nice. Number 6 for me is another First Second graphic novel. Incredible fact. First Second has more. They have the most comics out of any publisher on my entire list.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it's by Faith Erin Hicks and Jordi Belair. The last 2 volumes have made my list too. It's the final book of the Nameless City trilogy. It's the Divided Earth. It pays off everything that happens in the first 2 volumes perfectly. The character work is so beautiful. Like, it has one of my favorite endings out of any comic ever. And there's so much, like, I don't know. I mean, it was such a, it's like ends up being like a 700-page story where Faith Erin Hicks basically mirrors these like events with the characters so well. And you see these kids grow up, and like, it's just, it's a really heartfelt, character driven story that I really connected with. And like, fun fact, one of the characters in it is named Kai or Kaidu. And Amber suggested when we got a new kitten, Amber, my wife, for listeners, when we get a new kitten, she's like, what if we name him Kai? And I was like, this cat like runs across everything. He loves jumping up on top of stuff and running around and like a maniac. And Kai in the book, Kai and Rat, the 2 main characters, they like constantly parkour off of buildings running along the top of it. And so when she said Kai, I'm like, yeah, that's perfect. I even have a comic tie-in. This is perfect. So yeah, it is my number 6. Number 5 is a book that made my list after I literally read it 2 nights ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was. I bought these 2 graphic novels. Actually, no, never mind. Not the last First Second book, because this is First Second.
Is it first, second, or third?
I gotcha.
You feel what I'm putting down.
I got it. So it's I bought this pair of graphic novels just on a whim because I thought they looked beautiful. It's a series by a French cartoonist named Alex Alice called Castle in the Stars. The second volume is called The Moon King. I'm just gonna lay this out here really quick. When I described it to Amber, she was just like, how have you never read this comic before, and how is it not your favorite comic that's ever been made? Because it basically is like a Final Fantasy game mixed with like a Hayao Miyazaki movie with a bunch of airships everywhere and some of the most beautiful watercolor art I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, Alex Alice, bar none, is my favorite artist of this year. His stuff is beautiful. This book is so gorgeous, and it's like just a First Second is an all ages publisher. So if you want to get a book that you could read with your kids, like, this is a book about effectively some kids who are helping out with like a crazy space adventure. Like, it's like in 1869, and they become the first space travelers using this power of this thing called the ether. And it's like, it's really badass. Like, I love it. It's not, badass might not be the right word, but it's just really enjoyable, like action adventure romp with like a lot of really charming characters and beautiful art. I love it. I love it. It's so good. What is your number 5?
My number 5 is Mr. Miracle.
Nice.
That was a great book. Tom King and Mitch Gerards. Okay.
Garrett.
Ramadan. Yeah, so just phenomenal book. I mean, those two guys together are just stupid good. I loved everything they did with a character like Mr. Miracle, who, is B-C-list character. And I love when people come in and do stuff with lower level characters. We've talked about this earlier in this episode even. And just the unique take that Tom King comes in with some of these characters like he did with the Vision, just like I would never have thought to do this book. And that's what makes this book so great, because I don't think there are many people who would think to do this book.
Mm-hmm.
It's truly unique. And I love me some, X-Men books, which are obviously retread to death, but it makes books like this stand out even more, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And just, the basic stuff about fatherhood in the book obviously speaks to me as well. And just the funny moments, like you mentioned, like dark side, like double dipping and being a nasty man.
Like if we didn't know he was a villain already, we definitely knew after that.
Yeah, sold. Do everything I do to stop that man. But yeah, just phenomenal book. And I don't know. I don't think there's a lot that I can say that everybody hasn't already said. I know this book's going to end up high on a lot of lists.
Yeah.
But there's a reason for that. It's so solid.
What is your number 4? 4.
Number 4. All right. So now we hit what I like to call, if you look at my list and you can't already say it basically, but like from here on out, it's a lot of like fun books that like were, I don't know, I could settle in with them. I didn't have to think too overly hard with them. Like I just literally enjoyed them month in, month out just for what they were, which is basically superhero books. So my next up is Amazing Spider-Man, and that includes the Dan Slott stuff and the Nick Spencer stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think they did such a great job, or let me go back actually. Dan Slott's run is legendary, like Superior Spider-Man and things like that. And just the Spider-Verse essentially, like that's all his. I mean, his impact on those books are undeniable, whether or not you like them or not. Sure. And he had an incredibly long run on it as well, which I enjoyed, a good majority. Spider Island, maybe a miss, but when you got to run that long, like you're going to have some that don't just pan out the way you hope. Yeah. And his ending on this book with going down swinging was phenomenal. Like they did such a good job. Like the goblin, the red goblin, like the Carnage goblins mix, like that was crazy. It was fun. And then going into Amazing Spider-Man now with Nick Spencer and bringing in Ryan Ottley coming off Invincible, like that was awesome and gave it a cool look because, when's the last time you've seen Ottley on a Marvel book?
It's such a fun book.
It is. It's tons of fun. And just the way they've slowly brought back Mary Jane and him and have slowly kind of got some things like that back on the table, like I love it. I think it's fun. So yeah, that's my book.
I love the group that they introduce in it, where it's like all the people who have people in their lives who are superheroes, where they get to meet together, and Jarvis is running it. That's super. I just that book didn't make my list, but I really really enjoy it.
You mean the Better Heroes in Crisis issue?
Yes, fact. Number 4 for me is not a surprise for anybody who knows me or has listened to this before. It's The Wildstorm, which is both a Warren Ellis comic and a Wildstorm comic, which is very much up my alley. With John Davis Hunt on art. It is a spy story told with all of the Wildstorm characters, and it is amazing. Like I love it. And plus this year was like John Lynch rolling around with a bunch of like trying to put together effectively Gen 13. I mean, come on. That's like David Harper's childhood done by Warren Ellis, which is the best. I love the Wildstorm. It's like we've talked about this before. Like, when there's like a comic that is always like your first read, unless you're like the type who likes to savor it and save like your favorites for last, like it is always the first read for me, just because I know I'm just going to enjoy this fast, smart, great read. It's just such a good book. Number 3 for me is it's Black Hammer, but most notably Dr. Star and the Kingdom of Lost Tomorrows. It's set. The Black Hammer is Jeff Lemire and Dean Ormston's like larger universe, but there's a whole bunch of miniseries that spin off of it, like Doctor Star, which was Max Fiumara on art. Dave Stewart colors it all. Doctor Star and the Kingdom of Lost Tomorrows was just an astonishingly good comic. If you ever get the chance to read it, it's basically a Starman comic, and it will wreck you. As a father, it will wreck you. As a human being, it will wreck you. I have cat children, and I still was wrecked by it. It's like, I don't know. I mean, it's just really interesting because, you don't, well, tying into Heroes in Crisis again, you don't really get a good look at like, at the cost of being a superhero very often. And when you do, it's not really done in a way that's very human. And this comic is exactly that. It's brilliant. Black Hammer itself is also exceptional. It's just a comic that basically is like taking Essex County and Sweet Tooth era Jeff Lemire and jamming it into all of the superhero comics he's ever told. And it's got all these amazing homages to like Captain Marvel and to Martian Manhunter and et cetera, et cetera. It's really great. I mean, it is, out of all the comics on my list, I would say it is my favorite ongoing superhero comic right now, even though it's kind of like not a superhero comic totally. It's just a Jeff Lemire's superhero comic. I love it. What's your number 3?
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to check that out. You recommended that not too long ago, and I've been looking into picking that up actually, especially after the Century run.
Oh man, you're gonna love it. Love it.
So my number 3. So in years past, like sometimes my top 3 were kind of interchangeable, or like things below the 3 could bleed in. This year, my 3 have been pretty consistent all year. Like I've had a love for these books consistently throughout the year in a way that I knew like there's no way they were going to end up high. And the first of those books is The Flash. Joshua Williamson, and then a collective ridiculous load of like Flash artists, Scott Collins, Carmine DiGiomenico, Howard Porter, like just heavy hitters. And the way he's done The Flash, like, I don't know. I know you're a Flash fan too, and I know you're reading the trades and things, but it just, he progressively is getting better and better and better. And it's one of those few runs where this writer has been on this book for a long-ass time.
Yeah.
And they're giving him the opportunity to tell the stories he wants to tell, and, the slow force and things like that.
Still force.
Yeah, still force, whatever it is. But yeah, there's like the still force, the strength force, the sage force. Basically, I think he was just like, yo, we can Green Lantern this motherfucker.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so there's all these different forces, but they're obviously out of place. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Now he's on a Flash quest. Like, I don't know. The book's just fun. And the way they've been reintroducing Iris West back into things.
Was there somebody else that was introduced that would be up my alley?
Well, Bart.
Yeah, Impulse Boy.
Yeah, baby. Young Justice.
Young Justice. It's going to be a banner year for David and Brandon.
Yes, sir. Man, I can't even tell you. Like, I don't usually read much comic book news anymore, but I happened to go to like CBR and that was there, and I about did a fucking backflip.
Just involuntarily backflip.
He's got the leather coat and everything, man. Oh my God, Superboy. Anyway, so I just think overall, like Joshua Williamson, and like I mentioned earlier with the Batman stuff with Tom King, like clearly these guys are laying a foundation. So I like that trust that he's given. And like, is this the same Joshua Williamson that did New Mutants that became New X-Men? Am I wrong in that?
I don't think he did that. I don't think so. I don't think he did that. He did like Nailbiter and like a bunch of other like he did Birthright, and he's done other stuff, but I don't think he's done a lot of Marvel stuff. I think that wasn't him.
Okay.
I apologize, Josh, if I'm off base, but I don't think that's him.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up, but because I know like they did what was it called, like the Tsunami or whatever, and it had like Venom, and that New Mutants book was that.
I don't think that was him.
No,
I'm kind of curious as to who that was, but I don't know.
I'm looking it up now because it's gonna drive me nuts.
What is your number 2? I'll look it up as you talk about number 2.
Okay. My number 2 is Batman. Actually,
I thought it was coming.
Yeah, like. Has Tom King done anything to this book in a way that he did Vision or Mr. Miracle? No. But has he really played to the strengths of the character? Oh, hell yes. Like, he has just nailed this down. And again, it's one of those things where the Scott Snyder run was epic, but this tone is so different from that. And I've really enjoyed that. This is more of a gritty, broken Batman. The way they've been building Bane up in the background the whole time, it's just been phenomenal. And again, it feels like a book that's important. It feels like it's a book that matters to the overall DC universe, along with the Flash, because you're getting all these little seeds and like big things are happening. Yeah, but Tom King on Batman has just been stupid good.
The name that I've come up with is Nunzio de Filippis and Christina Ware for New
Yeah,
Mutants.
yeah,
I
I might have been way off.
all right, so that's awesome. I've heard really polarizing things about his Batman run, but I don't know. I
That's
mean,
because you got all the people that are like, ah, they didn't actually get married. What the fuck do you want them to get married for? What happens once you get married? The stories get boring.
well, and also like the story's not done. He's writing, and like he's already said he's on the book for 105 issues. Like,
And he's got it all laid out. I love everything about that. You
yeah,
know me.
let
I
it play
love
out.
long form storytelling in comics. Ooh, forgotten legends.
Yeah, no, I mean that is very much up your alley. Like I had a question on Patreon. It's like, is that the most successful run out of like any comic creator in how long? I mean, maybe since Bendis and Bagley on Ultimate Spider-Man. I don't know, but I mean, like people don't do 105 issue runs very often anymore.
No, not even
They
close.
don't even do 10 issue runs very often anymore. Um,
No.
so number two for me is another book that I read this week, but I knew I was going to love it. I was waiting for it in trade. It is Highest House, which is an IDW series by Mike Carey, Peter Gross, and Yuko Shimizu on covers. It's the same team who did the Vertigo series, The Unwritten, which was a book that I absolutely loved. This book, I honestly had no idea what it was about. And it is like a fantastic fantasy type series that has brilliant characterization and like incredibly detailed and beautiful and powerful storytelling art by Peter Gross. Mike Carey is a guy I absolutely love. His character work is just incredible. It's a book that I don't like, sometimes when you're reading something and you just like, what you're reading is special. It's just
Hmm.
like you have this feeling. You're just like, God, this is just killing it. And like when I was reading it, I was like, this is probably gonna be number one. Like this has got to be number one. And it's funny
Hmm.
because like if I tried to explain the plot to you, you'd be like, how is this your number one or number two? And it's just it's not like it's about more than the story. It's just like the execution is just so powerful. And I don't know. I connected with it in a very very substantial way. And like it's only been through 6 issues so far. Like the first trade is just 6 issues, but those 6 issues were just so dynamite, and I loved it. And I really hope they continue on because I want to read more of this story. It's basically about this kid who is effectively purchased as a slave, but he has like some connection to like this old world power at this like immense castle, the Highest House. And it's about him trying to like understand himself and trying to connect with this like power that's within him, and like how he survives in this like culture as this slave who is trying to find a way out of his place in life. It's a remarkably well done story, and I love it. I couldn't recommend it more. It's really good. Obviously because it's number two on my list. Number one is a single issue, which makes me a hypocrite with all the stuff I was saying. I was like, oh, I can't have that book on my series. I can't have that book on my list. It's only been through 3 issues.
Rules A
I
to B,
don't know
bro.
why I sound like that in my own impression of myself, but whatever. Anyways, it is Peter Parker, The Spectacular Spider-Man, number 310 by Chip Zdarsky. It is a one-shot story that ended Chip Zdarsky's run on the book. It is... This might sound like I'm not going to say it's the best Spider-Man comic that's ever been made, but I will say that I think it is my favorite Spider-Man comic that's ever been made. And it's a one-shot story that effectively just it just shows what makes Spider-Man somebody that everybody cares about. And I don't just mean characters in the Marvel universe. I mean in the real world. It touches on what is so essential and so special about this character and why he has survived in popularity through like almost 60 years of existence. And it's a beautifully heartfelt story that like, I don't know, there's this through line that is just so powerful that it's basically about a guy who's making a documentary about Spider-Man and like how he's trying to like see what everybody thinks about it. And there's this one character that keeps tying in about how Spider-Man treated her son. and it's just so powerful. And like the ending of it, like the final page is just Peter Parker talking about Spider-Man and what he means for the world. And I don't know, I mean, like Chip Zdarsky is such a funny creator because everyone like acts like he's just this hilarious guy, and he is a funny guy, but he's an incredible writer and somebody who has so much humanity in his work and somebody who has so much humanity in his art. And this was such a great example to show that he is a funny guy, but he's not just that. He's a human writer. He's somebody who understands the human condition and what makes these characters not just good, but like lasting. And he understands to the core in a way that few writers ever have for Spider-Man. So I loved it. It was my number one. I kept thinking about it, and I was like, could I really not have a comic that I describe as my favorite Spider-Man comic ever as not number one? And it had to be number one. What's your number one?
I'm just blown away by a couple of things. One, that it's a single issue, and two, that it's a Spider-Man comic. Like, would never have guessed that.
I love Spider-Man.
I 100% get that, but in all the years we've done this, how many Spider-Man books have you had on this list?
0.
Yeah. Well, maybe some Miles Morales back in the day.
Yeah. Did you read it?
No, but I'm going to now. That's my point. Like, the fact that it ended up number one on your list, like, yeah, you better believe I'm probably going to read that tonight.
You do it. It is incredible. I love it. I mean, you might like you might be verklempt. I'm just going to say it. Anyways, what's your number one?
My number one is X-Men Grand Design.
Ooh,
so
nice.
The second issue of the initial one came out, and then the two of Second Genesis came out. I love the X-Men. I don't know if you know who I am, but I love the X-Men. And this is just like the Kelly Thompson Rogue and Gambit series, just a ridiculous love letter to the X-Men. Ed Piskor's art on this is just so amazing, and the way that he's able to take such a huge, like how many years is that since what?
63.
So I mean, you're looking at 50 plus years of comics, and he's able to condense it into like 2-issue chunks for whole eras. Like, whoa! And granted, they're large issues and things like that, but it's just so well done, and he does it in such a seamless way, so it doesn't feel like it's a recap. But basically, you are just buying a stylized, super high price, very nice looking single issue recap issue.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's incredible, and you don't realize you're doing it until you do realize it, and then you're like, I don't even care.
But the thing is, this is like his reinterpretations of everything is so perfect. Like, I loved everything that took place during the Dark Phoenix saga with the Hellfire Club. Like, all that stuff that he did was so great. I mean, all of it's good, but that in particular, I was just like, this is amazing.
Dude, I say they let him go all the way up to the point of the Bendis run, and that's new continuity.
He doesn't want to. Like the X-Men books, like for him, were like the peak up until basically when they went to X-Men #1 with Jim Lee. So like he's just doing it up to that point.
Okay.
But
well, fine.
fine, Ed Piskor, do what you want.
Yeah, fine. Break my heart. I mean, as an X-Men fan, I just love the idea that he could actually make Chuck Austin's shit look decent.
Oh my God, that would be a legendary challenge.
Can you imagine, like, that whole era? Can you imagine him doing that? He'd have to do Extreme X-Men. He'd have to do, I mean, just like some wild X. Like, can you imagine him doing X-Statics?
I think
I would read an Ed Piskor X-Statics books all day.
I would do that one way or another, but I think you're currently describing why he is not going to, and why it's very difficult to do that, because it gets bananas. It gets so big. It gets so grandiose. I mean, like, it'd be hard. Like, imagine him trying to do Onslaught. I'm like, what is happening? But
dude, his 90s X-Men would be so fire.
I am not surprised it's your number one. I also very much enjoyed that book. The weird thing is I didn't really consider it just because it is kind of a recap book, but it is a great comic. I bought every issue. I enjoy the heck out of it, and it's a great book.
Yeah, and just even like the stylization of the individual issues being oversized and stuff, and like the off-color pages, like they just put so much work into it that I appreciate the hell out of it.
Yeah, no, it's a great book. And yeah, you're exactly right. Like, it feels like it's a comic that comes from a singular perspective, and it really has its own perspective, which I really appreciate, and is also pretty impressive given the fact that, again, it is like recapping comics that already happened. But anyways,
even if you've broken my heart,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry you will never get to see Chuck Austin as told by Ed Piskor.
I'm not going to get to see Annie the nurse hitting on Iceman while North Star hits on Iceman. Is that what you're telling me?
Pretty much, yeah. That's
Or the
exactly what
Angel is not going to try to sleep with underage Paige? I don't. What?
these are exactly what I'm referencing effectively. You'll never get Neil Chakrabar by Ed Piskor. Isn't it Chakrabar? Was
How
that?
dare you?
I'm sorry, you won't get that. Brandon, that's it. That's the end of the year recap. It was a great year in comics, and it was a great time chatting with you. Thank you for coming on once again, man.
Anytime, man.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of Off Panel with my pal Brandon Burpee. You can find him on Twitter at Brandon Burpee. If you're a fan of Off Panel, make sure to check it out on Patreon. If you back the show on there, you not only support it, but you get early access to each week's podcast, access to exclusive written and audio content, and more. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the show on iTunes or Stitcher and give the show a rating or review while you're at it. You can find it on social media by liking it on Facebook at /sketched, that's SKTCHD, following it on Twitter at @sketchcomic, or following me at @slicefriedgold. Big thanks to all my existing patrons, including Vita Ayala, JDC and Matt Gagnon, Aditya Bidikar, Tara Ferguson, TJ Dali, Dave Slusher, Kieran Mark Antonio, WMQ Comics, Akil, Greg Lockhart, Kokachi, Phil White, Ben Becker, Sean Pinello, Kent Heidelman, Philip Sevi, Al Ewing, Ryan Alcock, Nick Michelin, David Kelly, Rob Wilson IV, Nick Paletto, Dylan Campbell, Owen McCready, Brendan Fletcher, Gary Maloney, Jonathan Nilsson, Matthew Groom, Jason Massey, Mike Gillis, Adam Bogert, Xavier Files, Maria Schweitzer, Matthew Taylor, Tyler Turner, Dan Guarino, Nick Patera, Jacob Sorelli, Ford Gilmore, David Baraldi, Evan Blazer, Brian McCrae, Ira James Daskin, Henning Allers, Modern Magic Stories, Nick Hall, Bruno Batista, Bobby Angus, Bjorn Basin, Darren Neely, John Hendrick, Steve Anderson, Phil Nall, Ian Maxfield, Cliff Chang, Benjamin Shipper, Colin McMahon, Chris Palmer, Maxwell Schmidt, Scott McGovern, Nathan Fairbairn, Kat McKenzie, Lou Iovino, Nicholas Kesslake, Greg Rucka, Ryan Mail, Adam Highfield, Nicholas Gardner, Andrew Corrigan, Fiona Staples, Chris Morris, Chris O'Halloran, Mark Abnett, Mike Murphy, Michael Shirley, Tom Barnett, Jim DiMonacos, Norbert, Nick Lowe, James Kaplan, and Mission Comics and Art San Francisco. You guys are all the best. A quick thanks to the band Wolfpack, whose excellent track Outro from their album Volmilch opens the show. Give them a listen as they're totally rad. Thanks for listening, and tune in next week for another episode.